I'm Joshua Patrick Dudley, and I am the writer, director, and executive producer of Stab 4, and I also play Jay McConnell. Stab 4 was our very first movie that we had ever made, and we had no intention ever of posting it on YouTube or doing anything with it, actually. It was just kind of something I had written because I love writing. If you don't know, I write kids' books, I write horror movies. I'm a big writing fan. So Stab 4 was kind of my love child to the Scream movies. I am a huge Scream fan, and I wanted to do a project involving the Scream movies somehow. And thinking way back, after the Scream movies had come out, before YouTube even existed and stuff like that, I had heard of several Scream fan films that were available for sale on VHS, mind you. That's how old I am and how old the Scream movies are. There's one that stands out in my brain named Scream Louder, and as a kid, maybe an early teen, I'm trying to think of how old I was, probably about 13, I really, really wanted to see Scream Louder, like a Scream sequel that was made by somebody else, because there wasn't a Scream 2 yet, and they hadn't continued on, so I loved the first Scream movie, and I really wanted to see more. So I was going to buy a copy, and I asked my mom, and she said no. So she didn't want to send random people to money over the internet, because the internet was also fairly new. So after I saw Scream Louder, I think I always kind of had this idea in my head that I wanted to make my own Scream fan film, and that kind of stewed and brewed, and I never really got the chance in high school or anything like that. I was really into musical theater, which is actually how I know a lot of people involved in our productions, Rachel included. Rachel and I went to high school together. So I was heavily involved in theater and musical theater in high school and never really considered acting for camera or movie acting, even though that was another dream of mine since I was a little kid. I always wanted to have my own sitcom, but I was really into horror movies, and I took a video production class in high school because I wanted to learn more about the process, and I did learn a lot more about the process of filming and audio and lighting and all that kind of stuff, but that was more focused on TV production. We used to produce different TV shows every single week as part of our class, so we never really had a full-on film experience. I had a lot of friends that were very into filmmaking, some of whom I have worked with since, but I personally never really learned a whole lot about making a movie on my own. So I wrote the script to Stab 4, and I just thought it was a fun little tribute to the Stab movies, but then I decided I really wanted to try to film it, and I didn't have any equipment, I didn't have any money, I didn't know any actors, aside from people that I had done like musical theater with. So after recruiting a few people I had done musical theater with, like Jennifer Sue Mallard, who plays Heather Gale in the movie, I had done tons of musical theater with her. I started pulling in people from where I was working at the time, which was a restaurant. So the restaurant employees included a bunch of them: Shannon Nightingale, Patricia Shanley, who's in Stab 5, so she is not quite in Stab 4, but she is still from the same restaurant. Chris Doobie from Stab 4 was also from the same restaurant. Ashley Swank, who was in Stab 5, is also from the same restaurant. Amanda Constant, same restaurant. They were all co-workers of mine or friends of mine or people I had done theater with. So I kind of begged everyone to be a part of my project, and we didn't, again, think it was going to go anywhere. Like, it was just something I wanted to film and try out and see if I had any skills in filming and video editing and writing a movie and producing a movie and acting in a movie and doing all of that all at once. So I went for it, and I mean, watching Stab 4 today is very hard for me, and maybe even a lot of the cast. I know even some of the people that declined to be interviewed for this talked about how they weren't proud of their performances in it, and I tried to remind them that it's not necessarily them. Whether they were good actors or bad actors or had experience or didn't have acting experience, it was really, really low budget, and it was filmed in a very short amount of time. So they didn't get a lot of time to develop characters and get coached by me. As a director, I kind of failed in the aspect of coaching my actors to be better actors. But, and we filmed the entire thing on a flip camera, which, if you don't know, is like a little camera about this big, and it's handheld, and it does an 1080p that exists now, and 4K quality didn't exist back then in cheap little handheld cameras. So I believe everything was actually filmed in 720p, but sadly, after I edited it, it's all in like 480p. So Stab 4 is really, really low quality, not just in production, but in post-production too, because I, again, had no clue what I was doing. I don't have any regrets making Stab 4 though. We had a great time, and we had a great cast, and we had people who were just like willing to go there. It was an odd script because it was more of a parody of the Scream films and a tribute to the Scream films than it actually was its own like standalone film. It basically kind of copied ideas from the first 3 Scream or Stab films and rolled them all into one and renamed characters to cheesy names based on character names from the Scream movies. We also get a lot of questions about why the Stab movies inside of our Stab movies are called Scream in Stab 4. And that was because we were trying to change the mythology of it a little bit, and we were trying to debate if the Stab movies would still call themselves the Stab movies inside of the Stab movies, which now that Scream 4 and everything has come out much later, we know that they still call them the Stab movies. So I don't actually remember where we started filming because it was such a long time ago. I'm not even sure what the first scene we shot was on that little mini flip camera. But I do know that the cast wasn't complete. The script was much shorter than what it was, what it actually came out to be. Even though the movie is still actually very short, it's only it's under an hour and a half still. I think it's only an hour and 10 minutes long, and we thought it was going to be longer. But again, that was a learning experience for me because I had never really written a script to see how a page translates to screen and see how much time a page is going to take on screen. And sometimes it's a whole page will take a minute, and sometimes a whole page can take 5 minutes because it's a really long, drawn-out scene. So there's a lot of stuff missing from Stab 4, and we try to add a lot of it in as we went. When I started the project, I was kind of working on it alone. Aside from recruiting people to be in the movie, I didn't have Rachel by my side for that process. And as you all know, she becomes a much bigger part of the process for me, even included in the writing and the directing and the behind the scenes and on screen. Rachel becomes a huge player in this. But at the beginning, Rachel actually wasn't in Stab 4. And I had started production and I really needed some help and I didn't know who else to turn to. And Rachel has always been one of my best friends, and she had done musical theater, and once I thought about it, I was kind of sad that I hadn't offered her a part. So I actually wrote in a few more scenes where we see some flashbacks of the backstory of why the killers are the killers and why they're killing Sarah and all of her friends. And Rachel got added into that as like a crazy lunatic former version of another character pre-plastic surgery, which Rachel's so gung-ho and so freaking awesome. Like, it's so cool that she doesn't take that as an insult. Like, Rachel's down to play anything, which is really awesome, and she got the weirdest part to play in that entire movie, like an obsessed, like, lunatic, and I'm sure she regrets making some of those faces that I ended up using in the final shots on camera, but Rachel's awesome, and I got really lucky being able to add her into production later on as things rolled on, because she became very helpful, and she was able to help me film, and she was able to help me with special effects or hold lighting, and she would even bring a couple of friends sometimes to help hold lighting or move things around and keep things moving smoothly, you know. So Rachel, with all my heart, I love you. The opening scene of Stab 4 was filmed at my old apartment building, and the voice of the boss is actually my ex-boyfriend, so that's kind of funny to know. And him and I lived together there, and he wasn't super into the idea of me filming a movie that involved using our apartment, but you know, I did it anyways because I'm me and I do what I want because I'm an asshole. Yeah, the opening of Stab 4 was really cool. Amanda Constant and Alex Winter were super fun to work with, and they were really gung-ho. That scene was already really fleshed out in the script, so we kind of knew every move and every step and line that they were going to take. We didn't do a lot of takes on Stab 4, so the actors weren't given a lot of opportunity to improve their performance because we were in such tight time constraints, and I didn't know what I was doing. We kind of rushed through everything. So the opening, once we got through all the dialogue and got the lines right and realized we had to go back and refilm some of it because you could see like a mouse from a computer sitting on the couch and stuff like that. There were little bloopers that we had to go back and fix really quickly while we were still filming because we knew we weren't going to have another night of filming. Her getting the text messages and the phone calls, and I really wasn't sure how I was going to do them at the time, how we were going to see the text messages and the photo of Alex's character like peeing in the bathroom on her phone on screen. And we weren't trying to film the phones because our camera couldn't handle it. We had tried a few little tests of like filming someone's actual cell phone getting text messages, and it wasn't working. So I knew later on I was going to have to figure out how to do it digitally, and it came out so bad. And there's so many times I can say so many things came out bad in Stab 4, but you know, Stab 4 is our beginning, so no regrets. Hashtag no regrets. It is what it is. Alex got his throat slit in the opening, and that was really, really fun, and I did the makeup for it, and there's it was an interesting experience to try out new things too. Like I had never really had experience in special effects makeup, and I kind of knew going into this movie once production started that I was going to have to do it all. So we actually, his throat was made out of some form of like skin putty, and we just kind of molded it and drew on it and painted it and added in blood. And nothing super fancy. It didn't actually squirt or bleed or anything, all that kind of stuff. We kind of just threw blood on it and made it happen. So he was super gung-ho. He loved the death scene, and he was really, really excited about it. And Alex was super fun to work with the whole time. Like, he was really calm and patient and happy to be there, which is really cool because I didn't actually know him at the time. He was Amanda's boyfriend in real life, and she kind of convinced him to play the part for us, and it worked out so well because he's so funny in the part, and his death is awesome. So then it leads into an attack scene on Amanda's character, Haley, and there's like a whole run around through the building. She gets in an elevator, and this is one of the rare scenes that I actually storyboarded, and I don't have the storyboards anymore, but when I first started production on this, I really wanted to plan every single shot to make it so things went smoother and easier. So this scene, there was a storyboard that existed for it, and we pretty much stuck to it and went shot by shot by shot by shot and knocked it out back to back, especially when we knew that blood was going to be involved. So after Alex died, since we were filming just me, Alex, and Amanda, Alex actually kind of took over the camera for some of it too, aside from shots that I set up that were like steady shots. But any of the moving shots where you see the killer in the costume and Amanda, that's actually Alex filming because I was in the costume playing the killer. So then Amanda, gets stabbed to death in a trash room behind the elevator, which was a real place in my apartment building, and we just thought it would be kind of an interesting place to do it. And she did a great job. Like, we had an awesome time filming her death scene. I remember the blood shocking her, and that's a common theme with a lot of the actors, that as soon as blood hits them, it's like this whole new level of reality happens, and they kind of like freak out for a minute, and it takes them a few minutes to like catch their cool and stuff like that. So we had that moment, but we got past it, and we filmed our awesome death scene, and she did great dying. And funny note, when you see the character exit out of the door after he kills her, the door he's exiting out of actually leads to a dumpster. So it was me in the costume. So when I step out of that door, I actually had to just step onto a ledge because there's no ground there. It's actually like the level of a second story. So I had to step out onto a ledge and just kind of balance on the end until the shot was over. So that was funny. And the script was actually written a little bit differently in one aspect. In the original version of the script, I had decided that female exploitation in horror movies was annoying to me, especially as a gay man. Like, I really don't need to see all those boobies. And I understand, it becomes kind of like a horror movie trope that things like this happen, but I kind of wanted to reverse that. So the original opening of Stab 4 had Amanda's character, Haley, walking in and catching her boyfriend masturbating to a Stab movie. While we filmed it, it was cut out, and the footage now is non-existent, and you guys will never see it, but it did exist, that we were trying to exploit the males and not the females, and that's actually a running theme that you will see throughout the rest of the Stab movies, is the males kind of get exploited, and the females are kind of always the ones in power. Even when it comes to me and Rachel's character in the later on movies, it looks like I'm in power, but it's really Rachel running the show. So that's a lot of big goals, and I'm not sure if I knew I had that in mind when I was writing the Stab 4 at first, but it's really neat to see that it worked out like that I wrote so many strong, powerful female characters, and I think that's because I was raised by so many strong, powerful female characters. My mother and my grandmother and my sisters all serve as huge inspirations to me when I'm writing and creating female characters, and their strength and their vulnerability and how real they are really, I think, helps add a lot of levels to the different characters. If you don't know, the actors also contribute their own wardrobe, so everything you see us wearing in the movies is something that we've brought. That has changed later on in productions. We started buying some clothes for some of the actors for certain scenes and stuff like that, but most of the time any of the clothes that the actors are wearing are actually their own clothes, which I'm actually wearing one of my outfits from Stab 4 right now. This is my shirt that I'm wearing when I meet Jennifer's character in my office. So our original Ghostface costume that we used in Stab 4 was such a piece of shit. The fabric wasn't right. It actually had pinstripes in it. If you look really close, you can see pinstripes in the costume. But it was the only black kind of sparkly fabric that we could find. And I did the best I could. I have a little bit of sewing experience. Thank you, Mom. My mom taught me how to sew when I was little because she got sick of making costumes for me and all my productions and plays and dress-up time. So I sewed our costume, and I thought I knew what I was doing, and it didn't come out well. So later on in other movies, you'll actually see the costume slowly improve, but in Stab 4 and Stab 5, we used this same costume with the weird arm dangle things that kind of actually look like socks, because the fabric was not double-sided sparkly, so I had to sew it together to make both sides of it sparkly. I did not do it right. And then the hood almost has a visor on it, like he's wearing a hat, because I was trying to keep some form to the hood, but that didn't work out. And then the mask in Stab 4 is even worse. When we started filming Stab 4, they hadn't announced Scream 4 yet. It wasn't even a plan. And the only masks that we could find were these really cheap foam versions of the mask. So a couple of people actually own them now because we auctioned some off to raise money for some of our other productions. But the cast actually signed these horrible foam masks. And man, they were a pain in the butt to film with, because if you don't know, when you film with these ghost face masks, you usually have to cover under the eyes, like in here, there's fabric because you can see people's eyes through them, and that kind of gives away who the killer is, even though most of the time it's me or another actor playing the killer who isn't the killer. But you have to cover it up because all the lighting on set will make it so that you can see the actor's eyes. But we couldn't do that in the foam masks because every time we tried to glue something, it would melt the foam. Like we tried hot glue, which was stupid at first, and that melted the foam, so we lost a mask there. And then we actually tried like a liquid adhesive, and somehow it ate through the mask. So not only was the costume bad in Stab 4, but the mask was bad too. Sorry, Ghostface, we did not do you justice. The cast of Stab 4 was just awesome, and I feel so lucky that I got the chance to work with them. And like I said, they were all just like friends and co-workers, so they didn't have a lot of acting experience, but it was okay because I didn't have a lot of filming experience and we weren't planning on doing anything with it. But everybody just brought so much to their characters. Jennifer Sue Mallard playing Heather Gale was just phenomenal. The end sequence when you finally get the big reveal of how Heather Gale is connected to everything is just nuts. She kind of starts off all sad and then she cracks up laughing and loses it. And then Audrey Marquis, who plays Sarah Campbell, is a phenomenal dramatic actress. I had actually done a production with her in high school where she played Maria in West Side Story, so that's how I knew that Audrey could act. And I love Audrey, and she really brought a lot to the character and brought a lot of life to the shit that was on the page, because I won't lie, the script for Stab 4 is not good. You can buy a copy of it and read it. It's sold everywhere now. It's not the strongest script, and that character is not that well written. She does have some depth, but we actually added in a lot of the depth as we went on. Working with Audrey was an interesting experience because, like I said, she's so committed, so she had a lot of suggestions for the character. So her and I would sit and talk about things that could maybe work, like all of the entries that you see that she's doing on her webcam for therapy are not actually in the original version of this script. It was something that we had talked about, and she kind of ad-libbed through them, and we thought it would be a cool way to give her character another layer and show what was really going on with her, and she's not just the strong face that she puts on. But the character of Sarah Campbell is actually a great character, and a lot of fans were mad in Stab 5 when we switched to reality that we were no longer following the Sarah Campbell storyline. And I think that's because Audrey really did give it her all, and she did such a good job with the performance. And here is a fun fact too. Audrey is actually the only actress in StabMovies.com history to receive any sort of financial compensation for her role. She lived quite far away, probably about an hour and a half away from where we were filming, and we just had to reimburse her for gas every time. So she didn't get paid or anything like that, but we had to pay for her gas to get there every time because she was so far away. But I refused to have a different lead girl. There was, top secretly, a different female was originally cast as Sarah Campbell and turned down the role. She was a former beauty queen, and she was gorgeous, and she's a great actress, but she wasn't into horror that much. So the original Sarah Campbell, whose name will never be revealed, but there was a different Sarah Campbell originally. But Audrey originally actually told me no. When I first asked her to do it, she said no too, and she was busy and she didn't have time for production, and I begged hard because Audrey is phenomenal, and I know she can cry on cue, and I know she can get emotional, so I wanted to have her. So that was what we worked out, was a very tight time schedule that we could use her, and that we would reimburse her for gas for doing it. And then of course we had some other awesome side players. Shannon Nightingale, who did a great job playing the like ditzy blonde, which is not who she is in real life at all. She's actually very intelligent and very cool and very collected, but but she played Shannon Lewis, who was just dumb. And then as her sister was one of my best friends, Laura Coleman, and Laura has been in 2 Stab movies, and she has been my best friend for years and years and years, and she's actually one of the main characters in the kids' books that I write too, because that's how much I care about her. So Laura, I think that took some coaxing to get Laura to do the movie. She definitely had fun while she was there, but I don't think she wanted to be an actress by any means. So she was doing it kind of as a favor to me, and I think she did a great job. And then she brought along her boyfriend, Adam Kaufman, who played her boyfriend in the movie, Travis Tate, and he was a security guard in the movie, and Adam's an interesting guy in real life and on screen, so that was fun. Laura also brought along Rihanna, who plays my sister in the movie, Mandy Myers, and one of the killers, who was revealed to actually be Tammy Taylor. And Rihanna was just awesome on set. She gave it her all, and she actually declined to be interviewed for this because, you know, she's a little bit embarrassed of the ending of the movie because she didn't really think she's a good actress. And the truth is, she wasn't an actress at all. She was a friend of a friend, and she was doing us both a favor. So we are eternally grateful to you, Rihanna. Thank you so much for doing that for us. And I'm sad we couldn't get you to come do an interview because it would have been interesting to hear you say that. But man, I think we killed it together. Get it? We killed it because we killed everyone together because we were the killers. Okay, cool, yeah. But yeah, and then we had Alicia Vidgen and Marcel Robinson and Shayna Royston and Brett Mallard and Karen Ferrandino and all these awesome people that were involved in the movie. And if I left any of you out, I'm sorry. I'm not trying to list the whole cast here. We had a really great time filming everything. So another fun side note about Stab 4 is that the side scenes, the flashback scenes where we see Sarah Campbell's past life, I actually didn't write those. Rachel wrote those. So the conversation between Sarah and her mom and Sarah and her dad and Sarah and her sister were all actually written by Rachel and not me. Here's another fun fact. In the flashbacks at the end of the movie, when you see Rachel's character killing Brett Mallard and Karen Ferrandino, the parents, the Campbell family parents, it's actually Jen Mallard in the mask playing them and killing her own father from real life and our friend Karen. And she also plays a body double of the dead version of Sarah's sister, Casey, because Shayna, who played the part, couldn't be on set that night, and Jen's hair was close. They both had curly brown hair, so we stuck Jen in, and it's actually the back of Jen's head that you're seeing when her parents are running toward her. And then it's still Jen in the mask playing the killer when the Campbell parents get stabbed to death. Writing the movie, I knew I always wanted to play the killer. And to pay tribute to the Scream movies, I knew there had to be 2 killers. And I love when there's a female killer, so I had to add in a female killer. And then, of course, Scream 2 is my favorite of the Scream movies, so I love including the mother killer as a 3rd killer as a surprise. And though Heather Gale isn't technically the parents of Teddy and Tammy, she is their stepmother and reveals that she has killed their father as well, and was kind of guiding them in the process of killing Sarah and her friends to get revenge for making fun of her stepkids in high school. Laura's death scene was super fun to film. We drove around and we filmed in a car, and she let me swing a real knife at her. That's a good friend right there. All of the death scenes were really fun to film. When Adam gets killed out by the dumpster, you can actually see blood on his hand in the last shot. And that was because his little badge on his chest, his security badge, had slipped off and the pin kind of cut his pinky open, so his hand's bleeding through that. And that scene was actually written a little bit differently too. Originally, once he got the trash bag put on his head, the killer filled up the trash bag with a hose with water and then stabbed into it with his knife, making the bag pop, and all this like bloody water would squirt out and Adam would fall over dead. So we tried to accomplish this a couple of times, but it was a little bit of a freak out situation where Adam didn't want to drown, even though obviously he wasn't going to. There was holes in the bags in the back and everything would have gotten out. And then we actually saw a movie where a very similar killing happened, so we decided just kind of to cut it down and to have him kind of just get suffocated by this trash bag, which is weird for a ghost face killer, but you know, even though we make movies called Stab, you can't always kill people by stabbing them. Something has to be a little more exciting here and there. So I think Adam's death scene getting suffocated was pretty cool. Chris Doobie is awesome. I love him in this movie. He plays such a little punk in this movie, and he was so good at it. And Chris was another employee that I worked with at the restaurant that knew a bunch of people. So to see him evolve from Stab 4 to Stab 5 was really fun too, but he did a great job playing CJ in Stab 4, and his death scene was one of my favorites to film, but we had such a hard time filming it because it was so dark and it was outside. So we only had one bottle of blood for this entire movie. It was like this big, it was like a pint of fake blood, and we had to use that the whole time. So while we were filming Chris's death scene, Rachel and I kept putting it places and it kept falling over and spilling, so we started like freaking out that we were losing all the blood that we had left for the movie, and we still had to film the finale. So you'll notice the blood use kind of gets less and less as the movie goes on too, because it's so limited and we kept spilling it. But Chris was awesome. He did a great job in his death scene, and I think everyone really thought he was going to come back as a killer because he really was the red herring of that movie, and he kind of played it well that you would be suspicious of him, but for no reason, because he really was genuinely a nice guy, aside from a few douchebaggy comments he had made earlier in the movie. The death scenes out in the woods were really fun to film too. Marcel's death scene where he goes to pee and then gets killed by the killer, that one was really fun to film, and he did a great job. Like, we had a really fun time filming that, and he had a little bit more experience with acting too, so he kind of knew angles and where to turn and how to make it look like he got hit when he didn't and stuff like that. So that was fun. And then weeks later, we actually filmed the second death scene in the woods, Alicia's death scene, where she gets her throat slit. And man, oh man, was that a pain in the ass. We wanted it to be this big, exciting chase death scene, and she gets her Achilles tendon. She gets her Achilles tendon slit, and then she falls and she's crawling. So we really wanted this long, like, drawn out thing, and it just wasn't working out. Like, we just didn't have the time. We didn't have the amount of people we needed to help us with the camera and the lighting. And her little brother, who I believe was like 12 at the time, was actually holding lighting for us while we were doing this. And he had a friend there who was helping us too. And they actually ended up breaking our lights, which was even funnier. And Alicia was so gung-ho, and she had blood squirt all over her, and she ruined one of her favorite bras. And that was just a really interesting night of filming. And we were in the woods, and it was very buggy, and it was way after the rest of production had ended, and we realized we still hadn't filmed her death scene, so we kind of had to catch up. We filmed with a buck 119, and it's actually in the end of the movie. Rihanna's character complains about the fact that my character got her a buck 119 when it should be a buck 120. There's 2 inches different in the blade, man. Like, you can't fuck around with that. That's extra killing right there. So most of Stab 4 was actually filmed in a very, very short period of time. Anything that takes place at Shannon's house in the movie, which is actually my mother's house, who was on vacation at the time, and I kind of just broke into it and used it without her permission. Sorry, Mom. She wasn't super happy about that, but, you know, we cleaned the whole house after. We made it up to her, and she came home to a very clean house. All of that kind of happened over the course of like 3 days, and we didn't have long, and we were working around other people's schedules, so every scene was scheduled to the T, what time you had to be there, especially because everyone was still working, most of us at the same restaurant, so it's just kind of bounced around. And then all of the other side scenes, we just filmed whenever we could, as quickly as we could. And that was kind of the whole idea of Stab 4. It was, we just kind of rushed it out and threw it together. So the funny part is that we actually did a premiere for Stab 4 too. And I say that it's funny because it is probably our worst produced film. While the storyline is fun and the actors did a great job and we had a great time making it, no part of it should ever be shown in a movie theater. It's that low budget and that awful. The amount of takes that cut to the same shot because we didn't have different angles, and oh man, I don't even know. Like I said, I could go on for days listing the bad things about Stab 4, but the thing is, we have to remember, Stab 4 is what started us, and Stab 4 is what got us going. So, luckily, by the time that we had finished filming Stab 4, they had just announced that they were going to go into production on Scream 4. So we started getting lots and lots of press because we were already promoting Stab 4, and lots of people were excited about it. And even though the movie was awful, it kind of became an overnight viral sensation. Right now, Stab 4 already is way past like 16 million views on our YouTube channel. So we have Stab 4 to thank for everything. But it was a complete and utter shock to us. We did not see Stab 4 going anywhere. So the fact that it led on to so much more, and so many more movies, and so many more actors, and experiences, and friendships, you know, I think that's what makes Stab 4 worth it. Everything that we got out of it as people. We came together as a team, we had fun, and like a lot of the other cast members have said in other interviews that we've done for our movies, it really was like going to summer camp. Like, I think it's an experience none of us will ever forget, and though we all have our regrets, Stab 4 is Stab 4 Fresh Blood. There will never be another Stab 4 Fresh Blood. And that's just kind of cool, you know? Now we're part of the Stab legacy, and this is what started it all. I'm Joshua Dudley, and I'm the writer, director, and executive producer of Stab 5, and I also played a version of myself in Stab 5. After the success of Stab 4, the cast and I knew that we had to do a sequel. To go viral overnight was really, really exciting for us, and we instantly kind of started talking about ideas of where it would go. And originally Stab 5 was going to follow the Sarah Campbell storyline still, and we were going to see how that kind of progressed. I had written about half of a script that still continued her storyline, and I wasn't in love with it. I didn't feel like I wanted to do as much of a parody as we had done with Stab 4, so I really worked and thought hard about what I wanted to do with Stab 5. And later, when Scream 4 came out, it was revealed that there was supposed to be time travel in Stab 5, but while we were filming our version of Stab 5, Scream 4 still hadn't been released. So we had no idea that there was supposed to be time travel in it, and I'm not sure we would have included it anyways. That's a question we get asked a lot about Stab 5, is why there's no time travel, and that's why. Scream 4 hadn't come out yet, we didn't know it was going to be there, and it's kind of cheesy, like, let's not lie. Plus, the budgets we work with, we didn't really know where we could time travel to. Because even if we time travel to something easy like the 80s or the 90s or something like that, we could change people's hair and outfits and stuff, but you can't really change the outside world or the way a house looks, and we didn't have the budget to do something like that. So there is no time travel in our Stab 5. But Stab 5 marks the first of our own kind of original Stab trilogy. Stab 5, 6, and 7 were kind of planned to be one big chunk of movies that would end the series, and Stab 4 was just kind of a place that it all started. What I really like about the Stab movies and the Scream movies is how they play on the levels of reality, like a movie within a movie within a movie within a movie within a movie, and so on and so forth. So every step we took as we kept making the Stab movies after that kind of tries to raise the level of meta reality that we're now a part of. After scrapping the idea to continue the Sarah Campbell storyline, I wanted to do something that I could actually bring back the actors we had worked with before and kind of give them a second chance, now that we had learned some things and discovered some of our mistakes during filming and taught ourselves better ways, or slightly better ways, to do things. I wanted to give everyone another chance to come back and play a character and have a proper death scene and have a movie that was a little bit more put together than Stab 4. So Karen from Stab 4 actually bought us a new camera. It was still a little mini camera, but it did higher quality and it put out a much better picture. We could have kept using the same camera we used in Stab 4, but we upgraded to a slightly less ghetto version in Stab 5, and we can't thank Karen enough for that. It really did improve everything. The only thing that was really wrong about that camera is, if you watch it, it has this weird autofocus feature, and we couldn't turn it off. So there was no option to turn it off, so the movie kind of goes in and out of focus a lot. But it was still handheld, just like in Stab 4. Nobody was wearing mics, everybody had to talk loud, and you know, audio's a thing when your camera's all the way across the room and the actors on the opposite side of the room and you can't hear them. So it was much like stage acting in the fact that we had to project a lot too. I decided that Stab 5 was now going to be about real life. It was going to be about us trying to make Stab 5, kind of in the vein of Scream 3 where they're making Stab 3. But now we were all going to play ourselves. Everyone who was in Stab 4 was going to come back, and instead of me being Jay McConnell, I was now going to be Joshua Dudley. And everyone was an exaggerated version of themselves. Nobody actually is super true to character. I mean, a lot of them have some similar tendencies of what they played, including myself. You know, I'm a control freak, I get a little loud, and I'm a little nuts about doing stuff. But nothing on this level of crazy that any of them went to, you know. But there are many moments in Stab 5 that were based in actual reality too. There's a conversation that Jen Malliter and I have about her character in Stab 5, and that was a real conversation we had in real life, and I kind of translated it into the script to fit it into the script. But so that was the idea when we started, is that everybody is now playing themselves. Like I said, we loved working with Audrey, but we really wanted something shocking for the audience to realize that they were now in reality, and we were no longer in the world of Stab 4. So killing off the lead girl in the opening scene is kind of just like over the top crazy, and we knew we had to do it. And Audrey was really gung-ho about it. She was happy to come back and film that scene. And she was happy that that was the way her character was going out. Because it wasn't Sarah Campbell anymore, it was now her. And it shows the difference between the Sarah Campbell character and the character of Audrey. Not Audrey as a real person, but the character of Audrey. It's a little more realistic in what would happen if a killer came and attacked you. Like, Sarah Campbell didn't put up too much of a fight in Stab 4, and Audrey tries to put up a fight in Stab 5, but man, she gets her freaking ass kicked. But we knew that would shock the audience, and it would make them realize that this wasn't Stab 4 or the world of Stab 4 anymore. It was a whole new reality. And the actress that played Sarah Campbell had just gotten murdered within the first 7 minutes of the movie. And that was an incredible experience. Audrey has this huge tribute scene to the opening scene of Scream, where she's kind of going back and forth with the killer on the phone, and they're testing each other's knowledge to see how far they can get into the movie. Which again, now we're in real life, so the Scream movies exist, which kind of fade as our Stab movies go on, and they kind of only talk about the Stab movies and no longer the Scream movies after Stab 5. But so yes, the Scream movies existed in the first real life version of our Stab movies in Stab 5, and Audrey just kills that scene. Rihanna does a great job too. Getting her to come back was fun, and the way we got her to come back was the fact that we actually let her kind of talk shit about Stab 4, and we wrote it into the script. We addressed some issues that we were having in real life, where there was fans on message boards talking shit, and how actors felt maybe about their performances. Like I said, Rihanna wasn't super into her performance in Stab 4, so she got a chance to say that on camera in a movie, that, we did our best, we tried, and if people want to talk shit, that's up to them. So the movie kind of starts with a bitch slap in the face to all the haters, and then turns into this tribute to Scream, and then we kill off the lead girl and send everyone into a shock. Filming Audrey's death scene was awesome. We actually had the same costume from Stab 4, so it was the same killer and it was me in the costume. And this is where Rachel actually wasn't here for this part of filming either. She didn't film a scene with us. Rihanna actually helps out a lot with the camera work in the opening scene of Stab 5. But yeah, so Audrey gets stabbed through the hand after the killer throws her to the floor, and we have this fake hand that we used, and it didn't look right. It looked like all of a sudden she had a man hand. So we actually filmed this hand getting stabbed and stuff, and then couldn't use it because it didn't look like Audrey's hand. And then she gets up and she runs, and the killer catches up to her and throws her through a glass door, and she gets stabbed twice in the back on the balcony. And that was another tribute to another Scream death scene, and that was Cece's death scene in Scream 2. So Audrey got to play not one, but two tributes in her death scene in Stab 5. Filming on that balcony and throwing Audrey through that glass door was super fun, but super intense at the same time. It took a lot of different shots to get it right, a lot of precise timing to throw fake plastic glass with her, and we had two different kinds of fake glass. We had this really rubbery fake glass, and then we had shards of fake glass that were plastic, but they actually hurt. So Audrey and I were actually covered in little cuts after we filmed the scene, because some of the fake glass that was getting thrown around at us or that we landed on actually cut us, even though it's fake glass, so it shouldn't have cut us. And the fight scene itself hurt too. There's a part where Audrey kicks off the porch and pushes me into a wall, and we hadn't really rehearsed it. Like I said, just like Stab 4, there wasn't really a lot of rehearsal time. So I get thrown into the wall, and there was something on the wall that stabbed me in the back, so you see me kind of slowly slide down the wall in pain. That's real. That is real. I really got hurt there. And then moments later, as we continue to film the death scene, Audrey actually gets hurt. As we go to impale her through the throat, I actually whacked her head on the piece of fake plexiglass that was sticking out of the door frame. And she didn't bleed, and there was no cuts or anything. It was more of a shock, but it definitely happened, and she definitely was like, oh. And up until that point, we had no accidents with filming. We filmed with a real knife. For almost all of our movies, we use a real knife for a good majority of it, but Stab 4 and Stab 5 were filmed with a buck 119, which it should have been a buck 120, but all I had was a buck 119 that I had gotten as a kid, and there's more information about that in other vlogs and stuff, so you can check those out. Audrey really had the knife swung at her, a real knife swung at her, and I was the one swinging it at her. And I had practiced a lot, and like I said, up until the point of Audrey hitting her head on the plastic glass and me hitting my back, nobody had ever really gotten hurt while we were filming. But I do remember being very, very, very nervous filming that scene with her. we had finally upgraded the mask and found like rubber versions of the ghost face mask. So we were able to line the eyes, and now I had much darker eyes that I couldn't see through when I was swinging a knife at people. So the first time that we did the shot of Audrey going through the door and landing and me coming out and stabbing her in the back twice, I actually thought I stabbed her one of the times, and I stopped, and she was screaming so loud that it seemed real. So I thought I really stabbed her, and I stopped and like threw the knife and like took off the mask, and she was just actually a really great actress, and I was a better stuntman than I thought because it looked real, but it wasn't real. But man, that scared the fucking shit out of me. I won't forget that one. I really thought I stabbed Audrey, and I'm so happy I didn't. So after Audrey's character gets the glass through the throat, Rihanna's character kind of comes out and shoots at the killer, and he matrixes away from it, from the bullet, which is just funny. I don't know why we put that in there, that he ducks out of the way, but he does. And then he comes after her, and she gets her own little tribute to the Scream movies where she says, "No, please don't kill me, I want to be in the sequel," which is a line from Tatum in the first Scream. And then the killer stabs her 5 times because it's stab 5. And this is another thing we get a lot of questions about with the fans, is the shirt that Rihanna is wearing in stab 5 in the opening scene. When the close-ups make the shirt look like a different color, because a trick that we've used in a lot of our movies to stab people is to put the shirt that they were wearing over a cardboard box that has been padded with stuff so that we can actually stab into it and kind of make it look real and stuff like that. We forgot to film her close-up stabs in the apartment we were filming in for that opening scene. So I filmed them later at my apartment, and the lighting was different, and I didn't think about that at the time. So when I try to cut them together, they look like they're a different color shirt. Like it goes from green to yellow, from green to yellow to green to yellow, but it's actually the same shirt, it's just in different lighting. And we even tried to fix it in post and change the color of the shirt, but then it was changing the color of the blood in the kitchen. And so yeah, you know, little things happen. The other big thing that happens between stab 4 and stab 5 is that Shannon Nightingale gets replaced. Even though the character of Shannon Nightingale is a real person in Stab 5, she's now played by Stephanie Mayhew. And we actually started filming Stab 5 with the ending, and Shannon Nightingale, the original Shannon Nightingale, came back and filmed her end sequence, and then days after that got into a terrible car accident and couldn't continue production. She couldn't walk for months. It was a huge thing and a terrible loss for all of us. Like, I think we all really felt for her. It wasn't like in Stab 5 when we realized we have to replace Audrey and my character's an asshole. Like, we were all in genuine shock, and we were all genuinely worried about our friend, not about the actress in the movie. Like, Shannon was our friend, so that was a big thing, and we knew recasting her was going to be hard, but honestly, we didn't have a choice, and we had to focus on letting Shannon Nightingale get better. She has since recovered. For anyone that's wondering, she's back on her feet. She's doing great today. So yeah, she actually came and she filmed her end sequence before her accident, and the whole end sequence got filmed twice. So the character of Dylan was actually written for a different person, and this was another girl that we worked with at a restaurant, and she was awesome. And there's a lot of the lines that Dylan has, she calls herself this bitch, and that was because this girl at this restaurant that we all worked at together called herself that all the time. She said, "This bitch doesn't play that," or whatever, you know? So a lot of the character was actually based on her, and that's one of the blessings of doing these movies, is that I get to write for people a lot. Instead of just creating the characters, I get to kind of pander to people's positives and the things that I know that they do well. So this part was written for somebody else, and then she actually got cancer. So it was skin cancer, and it wasn't too serious, but she had to have some surgeries and stuff like that. So we had to replace her in the movie. Again, no hard feelings. We totally understood and wished her the best. And, you know, obviously, skin cancer, like, go take care of that. That's way more important than making this movie for YouTube with us. So then we cast another girl as Dylan and filmed the entire end sequence with her, and like the big reveal, and the end sequence actually happened out in the main area of the basement that you see later on in the final version of the ending, and it wasn't in that little separate back room that you see in what we use in the movie now. But there was a different girl playing the Dylan cop character, and we filmed the whole ending. Rachel and I like to communicate with the cast a lot and wish them well and send them praise and thank you after every night of filming, and I made the mistake of messaging everyone after this really long night of filming the end sequence, and I think I messaged everyone at like 2 o'clock in the morning or something, and Why your phone isn't on silent, I don't know, but the girl that was originally playing Dylan was very, very angry that I sent out a message that late at night saying thank you for coming and filming this and doing such a great job. Even though the message was full of compliments and stuff, she was very, very, very angry and picked a fight with me and then quit production on the spot. So I actually lost the footage from it. Not that I think I would show it anyways because it would reveal who this actress was, but that was a big hit, and that was right at the beginning of production, and we thought we were getting ahead of the game by filming the ending first, and then we had to go back and redo it all, and it kind of got mixed into production and became this like thing that we had to do the ending again. So that one was hard to get over, and that kind of losing the original Shannon and having to replace Dylan twice in Stab 5 was like the start of the curse of Stab movies. Casting people that don't commit to things or that bail for no reason. And it just continues. Stab 5 also marked the first time that we had an out-of-state cast member. Chris O'Brockie came up from Maryland and played an awesome character in the movie. And by this time, Stab 4 had gotten so popular that we had a really big fan base online, so we actually held open auditions for Stab 5 where anyone could submit a video audition, and Chris submitted a video audition and fucking killed it, and we loved him and we thought he was awesome, and he flew himself out here and even paid for his own hotel room and stayed here the whole time that we filmed and stuff. So again, that became a scheduling thing too, where we now had to squeeze every scene that had Chris's character into this tight, I believe it was 2 or 3 days that we had Chris for. And we had to knock out everything he had right then, so all the other actors had to be ready. But Chris is awesome on set, and we had a great fucking time working with Chris O'Brockie. Chris Doobie finally got to play the killer, so he was fun to bring back, and he brought his friend Steve Matlock with him, and they did awesome. Like, they are, in our history, the only 2 male killers that work together in our Stab movies, and they're, like, quite the fucking team. I think it was because they were friends in real life that the chemistry between them just played so well, but you really believed that they cared about each other enough and about each other's love lives enough that they would go and kill all these people to get revenge on them for each other. And so that Steve could try to end up with Jennifer's character. They did such a good job. Like, they're fun actors to begin with, both of whom, like I said, have no acting experience besides being in our movies, but they just bring life and energy to every scene, and to bring that level of crazy energy in was just nuts. Just nuts. They did such a good job. So Stab 5 is also when Rachel finally gets to step up and start participating a lot more too. She's got a much bigger character in Stab 5. She's playing herself, and she is technically part of the cast of Stab 4 still because she had that little cameo. And she's basically my assistant in the movie, so her part is huge. She's the assistant director, and then she also expanded her roles behind the scenes too. So there's a lot more scenes that Rachel helped film in that Rachel helped set up, and she helped organize the cast and send out emails and keep everybody in line and help them go over their lines. Like, Rachel is the best partner in crime you could ask for when making a movie. Like, if I'm busy because we don't have a crew and I have to go set up lighting and stuff, Rachel is in a separate room with the cast, drilling lines into their head and letting them know what I'm not going to like about it, because we've worked together so many times that she can just know, Josh isn't going to like the way you said that line. So it's actually pretty awesome, and I'm always excited to write for Rachel. I try to empower the Rachel character a lot, and it's a slow process. Rachel's character shows more growth than any of the other characters over the process of the Stab movies. She starts off as my assistant, and she kind of takes my shit, even though she complains about it here and there, and gives like a little bit of it back to me, you know? But every movie she gets stronger and stronger and stronger and more powerful until she just that bitch. Rachel dat bitch, yo. If you don't know, Rachel dat bitch. She's also the queen of Stab, if you didn't know this. Rachel has appeared in more Stab movies and short movies for StabMovies.com than any other of our actresses. Nicole Linton is a close second, but Rachel still has 2 movies ahead of her. But Rachel, the queen of Stab, we bow down to you, we love you. You fucking killed it in Stab 5. Stab 5 also introduces a lot of new characters. I like the idea of having a reporter involved because it keeps that Gale Weathers aspect kind of in there. So we brought on Heidi Nicole to play Kylie Scott, and she's just in it for a few minutes in Stab 5. She has a quick little news sequence here and there, and then we really, really expand her role in Stab 6, but she was fun to work with, and that's why her role got expanded. When we cast her in Stab 5, she was a friend of a friend of a friend, and so on and so forth. And she auditioned too and still got cast as the news anchor, who didn't even have a name at the time. And then I came up with a name for her. And then once the name kind of was in my brain, I kind of started seeing this character developing further. So Kylie's character starts off really small in Stab 5 and then gets huge in Stab 6. And her character would have continued into the opening scene of Stab 7, but she would have died. In both versions of Stab 7, Rachel's character kills the Kylie character, or Kylie ends up dead somehow by Rachel's hand, directly or indirectly. But she did a great job. Bringing the cast back, though, was just the best experience. Bringing Karen back, having Chris Doobie back, and then mixing Jen back, and mixing them with the newbies like Patricia Shanley, who was friends with a lot of people, too, because she also worked at the restaurant that we had all worked at originally. Having her come in as the Regina character was just awesome, because, again, in real life, she's a cool lady, but you don't fuck with her. She a bad bitch. So it was cool to have her play such a tough cop, who also had this really funny soft side that I made her an author, too. She was an aspiring author, and I think that was an attempt at trying to develop characters a little bit further than they had been in the first couple of movies. But it was a weird mix to have people from the first movie playing themselves, and then to have the new actors in Stab 5 playing characters. So Stab 5 overall was just like a really exciting experience. We got to do a lot more stuff that we didn't get to do the first time. We got to step up the gore, step up the blood, step up the fight scenes, the attacks, the camera work actually gets a little bit better. There's better angles. Yes, it's still sloppy, but it's great. Jennifer Sue Mallard also came back, which was great, and she kind of takes over the leading role in Stab 5, and the movie's kind of based around her, which was great because we just loved her so much as Heather Gale that we really wanted to expand on her and give her something different to play that wasn't like an over-the-top crazy person. So she gets to play a real girl, a real normal girl, who is the main idea of the attacks. You know, someone's trying to kill off all of the stars of Stab 4, and she's one of the biggest stars, so she's the main target. And as her boyfriend, we actually have Dave Fine, who plays a character named Dave. That shows you how creative I am sometimes. He plays her boyfriend via webcam, and all of his stuff really was filmed via webcam, and he was never in New Hampshire with us, and we even rehearsed with him via webcam, and goddamn, Dave Fine is amazing. If you don't know who he is, YouTube him, Google him. Dave is awesome. You'll love him. And he did such a killer performance via webcam for us. Like, we'll never forget him. Like, we had such a great time with him. Such a fucking great time with Dave Fine. We love you, Dave Fine. Dave really brought a lot, and a lot of the stuff he does in there that's not direct lines is ad-libbed, and he really just kills it. He's much needed comedic relief, especially in the middle of like death scenes and stuff too, that they're on the computer talking to him. It was great to have him, and we wish we could have brought him back more. What we also didn't know or even think about at the time when I was writing the script is that a lot of people would see Dave as the red herring of the film, like that he's setting up to be the killer, that he's going to be the killer, because you only see him via webcam. So how do you know he's not just actually hiding in a hotel room somewhere waiting to reveal himself as the killer? And he is the lead girl's boyfriend, so it would totally make sense. But nope, it was all via webcam, so Dave could never be the killer because he would have to be the killer via webcam. So thank you, Dave. You did awesome. Also in production of Stab 5, I got to go to the premiere of Scream 4 in Hollywood, which is really cool. This is actually a shirt I wore to the premiere of Scream 4, and it's an outfit I wore in Stab 5 too during the audition sequences. But I got to go to the premiere of Scream 4, and when the movie ended, I had to text Rachel and tell her that we now had to change some of the ending again. What I had written for the end of Stab 5 was so close to the end of Scream 4 that it was mind-blowing. It was almost like Kevin Williamson and I had seen each other's scripts and kind of bounced off of them and went with the same ideas. So originally the killer in Stab 5 was one of Jennifer's cousins. Go frickin' figure, who wanted the spotlight, and she was jealous of all the attention Jennifer got for being involved in this. So she was the killer, and that character is actually still in the movie. I'm not going to tell you who it is. I'll see if you can figure it out on your own. And she does die, but she would have come back to be revealed as Jennifer's cousin and as one of the killers. So we had to fix that. And Steve and Chris became the killers, and that ending was reworked so that it was now a love story and a revenge story, and no longer a story of a jealous cousin trying to take the leading role. And they all played such crazy versions of themselves, like Amanda Constant and Shayna Royston playing lesbians was just hilarious because neither one of them are lesbians in real life. As I said, Amanda's boyfriend at the time of Stab 4 was the boyfriend in the scene was Alex Wenta, who plays a different character in Stab 5 where they're basically not connected at all. But it was great, and everybody really gave it their all, and they really tried their hardest because they knew Stab 4 was such a success, and I think everyone could feel that Stab 5 had a lot of people waiting for it, and we all wanted it to be the best that it could be. And I think from Stab 4, it was definitely a step up, production-wise, script-wise, and acting-wise. I think, you know, a lot of stuff really improved, and overall, I'm very happy with Stab 5. It's probably one of my favorite stabs that we've made so far. My character in Stab 5 was an asshole. He was a complete and total asshole. He ran the show, and he was a drama queen, and he was a bitch, and he had respect for nobody, and if you didn't do what he said, he didn't give a fuck, you were done. And, you know, that's not totally me in real life. I am a little aggressive, so we do compare a little, because I'm also the director too, but I am insane, but I'm not that insane. But playing the Stab version of Josh is always like, super, super fun because he's a fucking lunatic, and it's rare that I get to go there. So Stab 5 is a bigger moment for my character because he's alive, and because he stands out quite a bit because he really only cares about his production. He doesn't really care about the people involved in it, and that's not me at all. I love everybody in our movies, and I'm so grateful for them. So everybody in Stab 5, thank you. I love you. Stab 5 was cool too because you also got to see production of the Stab 5 movie that we were making inside of Stab 5. So you got to see me directing, you got to see the characters pretending to be the sound guy and the light guy and stuff like that. The throwback scene to Sarah Campbell and Heather Gale where we have the new actresses playing Sarah Campbell and Jen returning as Heather Gale, and it's just so funny to see Jen jump back into that role. The overacting that they were instructed to do was it was so great. I loved every second of it. Filming in the parking garage for Chris O'Brocky's death scene was freezing. The whole production was freezing because we filmed in the middle of winter, but the parking garage was one of the worst ones because it was cold, and we went to a parking garage, and actually, go figure, we couldn't film in that parking garage, and we didn't know that, so we had to move locations. And Chris actually liked the first parking garage better, but I didn't. I actually thought the second parking garage had cooler lighting because it had like this weird like green tint to it. But his death scene was cold and freezing, and we were running around, and I had a winter coat on under the costume, so I was definitely doing a lot better than he was, and he was covered in blood that was literally starting to freeze to him, like crystallize on him, so that was intense. Ariel played Veronica in Stab 5, and that was a fun aspect too, to introduce this new character that was taking over as Sarah Campbell. Her death scene was also really cold and in a parking garage, but hers has a really cool story too, because the sweater she's wearing, she actually went as Casey Becker from Scream for Halloween, so she had this yellow sweater that already had all these like kind of cuts and stabs in them because it was her Casey Becker sweater. And that's a tongue twister. Casey Becker sweater. Try saying that 10 times fast. But she had, yeah, so Ariel came with a pre-made death scene costume, so that was an awesome benefit from her. And then we kind of subbed out a different yellow sweater first that she switched in, so there are slight differences, but you barely notice them. After she dies, I run away without my shoes on because the killer had to borrow my shoes because it was Steve Matlock playing the killer at that time. So I remember having to run in the freezing cold winter in the parking garage in my shoes, and that really sucked. Karen died outside after her house got TP'd, and you know, Karen's so awesome to our productions that I wanted to give her a really fun death scene, and she's not really in much else of Stab 5 aside from this one scene. So originally she was going to get a phone call, but we cut that, and I wanted everyone to remember that it was a Christmas movie, or was set during the holidays. So she's outside fixing her Christmas lights, and her house got TP'd, and she's yelling at teenagers, which is not like Karen. Karen is so sweet and loving and supporting, so it was so funny to even see her raise her voice at all. Like, Karen honestly is like, she was our set mom a lot in the movies during Stab 5, 4, and 6. So Karen is an amazing woman, and she went through so much in Stab 5 in that death scene. Like, she got fake stabbed, I swung a real knife at her. It was actually raining out while we were filming, and we didn't have a lot of protection to cover us up with, and we actually put up these big tarp things, and they were making all this noise, so we couldn't use them, so we had to film in the rain. And Karen got stabbed to death in the rain and then got dragged through the snow, which took multiple takes, which is, if you look close, you could see a lot of cuts in that scene because it took a lot of effort to fix that. Karen is such a trooper, and like I said, we can never thank her and her husband enough for what they've done for Stab movies. In Stab 5, we wanted to try different levels of horror, I guess you could say, too, and different horror tropes or horror themes that you would see in other movies. And a real classic thing is people going to fortune teller. So we added a fortune teller, and our fortune teller was played by a girl named Ashley Swank, who was just fantastic. And We had such a fun time with her on set, and she got thrown into the mix, and she got thrown into a lot of crazy stuff. And we filmed at this store called Myth and Maidens in Manchester, and they had a beautiful store, and it really did look like an occult store. But we filmed upstairs and downstairs there, and upstairs was beautiful, and downstairs was like, what are we doing here? And I could see the nervous looks on everybody's faces when we started, but for the most part, I think we made it work. I wish we had brought some more props to kind of fill out the shelves, or maybe borrowed some stuff from the store to fill out the shelves down in where we did the tarot card reading part. Ashley did an awesome job, and she took her death scene well, and that was also another one that was a catastrophe because we didn't have a right costume, and we couldn't get blood anywhere. It was rough, and Ashley was a real trooper through it, and we made it work. And Chris Doobie actually got to play the killer in that scene because he was the killer in the movie, so it was cool to get to use him for that. Everything that we filmed at the fortune teller store, we basically had it filmed in one day, so we were jumping all different kinds of scenes all around and bouncing it. So Stab 5 also introduces the Dylan character, and she's really popular. It introduced Dylan and Regina. They were a crime-fighting duo, basically, of aunt and niece. And you find out that Dylan was basically orphaned, and her aunt took her in. And Dylan's like obsessed with Nancy Drew, and her aunt makes fun of her for it, but they're on the police force together, and Regina kind of trained Dylan through all of Stab 5. Dylan really looks up to her, and I think that's why a lot of people liked the Dylan character in Stab 5, was because she was so relatable, and she was learning as the movie went on, and she was looking up to a family member who really cared about her and really wanted her to succeed. Their relationship was an important one, and it was also important that their relationship ended at some point. So Regina does die in Stab 5, and it's devastating to Dylan's character. Dylan was not intended to survive Stab 5. She has a few lines at the end, but we never actually filmed the shot of her dying. So I never had a shot of her dying to show that she doesn't make it. And we could have just explained it in the next movie that she was dead. But she actually was really popular with the fans. So we decided to bring her back for Stab 6, and Dylan was still alive. And then Dylan played a really big part in Stab 6. Even though she didn't have her aunt, she did kind of have her aunt guiding her spiritually. But Dylan reveals a lot of storyline details throughout the movie. And she's a pretty important character, but I did try to kill her again. I love Mandy, and Mandy really does give it her all. She's not an actress at all to begin with, so we were lucky we got her when we needed her. Mandy has a life, and Mandy is busy, and Mandy has a hard time learning lines, and we work together very well for the most part, but like me, she has her limits. So I kept trying to write her out of the series, but the fans kept wanting her in. And, this is honest confession time. Like I said, I love her. I just, she wasn't always my favorite person to film with on set because it was usually a challenge with the lines. Usually she just didn't have her lines memorized. She did blow me away. She did come back in one of the movies, and one of the scenes she filmed absolutely blew me away and did her whole scene like crazy. And I think it was a confidence thing at first, that she wasn't remembering her lines, or maybe she just didn't spend enough time studying them, but it was a constant pain in the butt to get Mandy to learn her lines, so I tried to kill her off in every movie. But because I knew how much the fans loved her, I actually, when we filmed her death scene in Stab 6, I filmed that little clip at the end that if you watch the whole movie all the way through and you watch the credits all the way through, you see that she's still alive and she's crawling her way back to life. And I heavily debated if it was going to make the cut at all, and I think it did because, like I said, I love Mandy. Even though it might be challenging sometimes to work with her, I think the fans were really invested in her character, and I was really invested in her. And I appreciated the fact that even though she wasn't an actress, she tried every time. She showed up, and she gave 100% of what she could. So that's a tough one for me. The Dylan character and I were close to. I liked writing the Dylan character, so killing her off and keeping her and then losing her to other productions is just it's a sad experience, I'm Joshua Dudley, and I am the writer, director, and executive producer of Stab 6, and I also play a version of myself in Stab 6. My character in Stab 6 doesn't survive very long. Aside from him being in the costume once he actually takes off the mask, I think I have about 2 minutes of screen time before I get my throat slit by another killer. So my character in Stab 6 doesn't exist much, and that was for a reason. I really wanted to be able to focus on being more behind the camera in Stab 6. And instead of having to set up shots and hope that I'm in them properly, I really wanted to have a lot more control because I'm a control freak. So I decided to kill my character off in Stab 6. Production on Stab 6, I think, was super hyped up compared to every other movie that we had done so far. It was also probably one of the most well-planned out of all of our films because we had a very tight time constraint. Stab 4 was super successful on YouTube, and Stab 5 just surpassed it, and we didn't think that it was going to have such a big response. So Stab 6 we knew had to be bigger and better and gorier and scarier and funnier and crazier all at the same time. So I had all of these ideas flowing around after Stab 5, and I bounced around with so many of them, and we had killed off so many of the cast that trying to continue the idea of killing off the cast of Stab 4 was kind of difficult because there wasn't that many of them left. And some of the ones that were left, we couldn't actually get to come back for production. So you'll notice there's a scene later on in the movie with Dylan that she kind of reveals several characters that are dead. One that died of a heart attack, 2 that died in a car crash, and 1 that's in hiding because we couldn't get them to come back for the movie. So that was interesting. Jennifer Sue Mallard was actually originally intended to be the opening victim of Stab 6, and we were trying to continue the theme of killing off our lead girls. We wrote this big, long, extended opening where her and I are kind of watching a movie and discussing the next Stab movie, and I go a little nutso and kill her off, and you find out that I'm actually connected to the killers from Stab 5, that I was working with Chris and Steve's characters to kill everybody. And I kind of continue it with her, and it's this big, long torture scene, and we couldn't get Jen to come back. Jen is not a huge fan of horror movies, which we discussed in the Stab 5 interviews, and kind of in Stab 5 you kind of understand that in real life Jen doesn't necessarily lean in the horror direction. So we couldn't get her to come back, and I had to rewrite the opening. And like I said, there were very few people that were still alive from Stab 4 that could be killed off, but Laura and Adam were not in Stab 5 at all. So we were able to talk them into coming back, and they were still together in real life, and they were living together, and they were really getting engaged and planning their wedding and all this other kind of crazy stuff. I kind of just wrote an opening scene based around their real life. I even wrote in the fact that Adam didn't want me at their wedding, which wasn't true. It was just like a little poke at me. I like to have fun, and I'm very self-deprecating because I can be loud and controlling. So he did have a little line that he wasn't happy that I wasn't coming to the wedding, and Laura had to confess to him that she invited me. And then they get the phone call, and they get all freaked out. They're actually watching a Stab movie. They're watching Stab 6 in Stab 6 to start Stab 6, which is crazy. But I just wanted it to make sense in the Stab universe that Stab 6 was Stab 6, and that's why we saw these characters from the real Stab 6 that was inside of Scream 4, even though we were inside of our Stab 6, which was for YouTube. Does that make sense to everyone? So Laura and Adam are watching Stab 6, they get the phone call, and the killer comes out, and Adam has one of my favorite death scenes where he gets stabbed up through the throat, and I love that death scene. I think it's great. And then Laura and I have this big fight, and fun fact, I'm in the costume, I stab Adam in the throat, and then I attack Laura, and I do the little flip, and then I chase Laura to the staircase, and then from that point on, the killer in the costume is actually Christian Ryan, who is another cast member from the movie, and he plays the killer for the rest of that sequence, and he also plays the zombie face killer that kills me. This again was another attempt to get me more behind the camera so that I could have more control over the shots and see what was going on, but Rachel was very heavily involved again in this, and she filmed a lot of the opening of Stab 6 as well, including some of the best shots, like the weird angle down the staircase that we see when Laura's getting killed and stuff. Rachel had to like lay on her back to film that. It was so funny because we were in the style of this house was the staircase was really tight and really steep. So Rachel got some really cool shots out of that. Laura's character dies, and I pull off the mask and reveal me, and that I've been plotting it, and that I filmed the murders, and then I get a phone call from the killer, and then I get my throat slit, and that's the opening scene of Stab 6. And then the basic rest of the idea of Stab 6 is that Stephanie, who plays the Shannon character, is kind of taking over as the lead girl now, and Rachel's character meets Kylie's character, and Kylie's cameraman, Corey, played by the fantastic Jeff Davis, and they kind of hit it off and plot, and we don't really ever know what they're plotting. We assume the whole time that they're plotting this TV show that they're working on that we eventually see, the Stab Project, but in reality they're actually plotting this TV show so that they can help plot the murders. And they somehow talk Shannon into being part of this TV show that they're trying to put together. That's a stab reality competition show where people can compete to win roles in the next Stab movie that Rachel is now going to take over writing because my character has died. And Kylie has written books based on the actual murders that happened in Stab 5 called The Manchester Massacre, which is very reminiscent of Gail Weathers writing the books about the murders that inspired the Stab movies and the Scream movies. See where we're going with this? The reality TV show idea was something that I wanted to do, and I thought it would be cool. We had never really done a movie that was set just in one place. And yes, the opening of the movie takes place at a bunch of different locations, and we kind of travel around a little bit. But once we get to that house, once the cast and Rachel and Stephanie's character and Heidi's character all kind of move in and get locked in, we don't leave that house. And it's actually Karen's house from the first movie. And Karen was amazing yet again and let us film there. And we were in the middle of the summer, so it was sweltering hot, and there was no AC, and there was tons of cast members, and we had helpers, and there was a lot of people in there making it very hot. And the only slight type of cooling system we had was like a central fan that ran throughout the house, and it was loud, so you can actually hear it in the background of a lot of the shots, the fans in the house. So the process of filming Stab 6 was really, really intense. Like I said, it was really hot. We were all dripping sweat, and we were working long days and nights, like starting very, very early in the morning all the way to late at night / early in the morning again, just because we had so much to do and we had such little time to do it. This production also involved a lot more out-of-state cast members. So we had Chris O'Brockie come back to play the twin of his character from the first movie. We had Ashley Younger come, Kwame Berry, Frederick Collier. All these people are from different states, and they flew out here and stayed out here to stay with us and make this movie. So we squeezed a lot of the production that was in that house into about a week. Maybe a little less. I can't fully remember. Maybe it was about 5 days. And not everybody had to be there every single day, but a good majority of the cast was there frequently. And some people like Nicole Linton, I wrote parts for almost everybody. I was writing for the actors because I pre-cast the movie. I knew who wanted to be involved this time, and I knew who would do well where, or at least I thought I did. And aside from the out-of-state cast members who kind of just picked up parts that were written that I hadn't cast yet, everyone had their parts written for them. So it was an easier process, I think, for a lot of people. Maybe not for Rachel and Heidi and Stephanie, because their parts were just so big. Like, they had pages of dialogue, and Heidi had these big, long monologues and stuff like that to give to the cast of the TV show. And people like Nicole Linton, who played Maria, had a very short amount of time that they were available to do this. She's a mother, she has kids, she worked a lot of jobs, but we wanted her in it, so we wrote her a part that she was able to film all of her stuff basically in one day. And she actually talks about, there was a scene after she was dead, we were filming this other scene, and I put her in it, and I don't know why. We made her sit down and insisted she was in the scene, and then we started filming it, and about a quarter of the way through the scene, we're like, wait a minute, Nikki, you're not in the scene, you're dead. Like, what are you still doing here? Like, go sit on the side until we're ready to film your death scene. So it was kind of funny that she snuck her way in there and then, like, kind of didn't say anything. I think she knew she was dead, too. She wanted that extra screen time, but she gets it, trust me. She's in a lot of our other movies, so the cast of Stab 6 was absolutely phenomenal. Like, so many different people brought so many different things to their roles, and everybody plays a part that maybe you'd expect them to play, but then they played in this way that just, like, blows your mind. Like, Alex Staff, who plays the dorky girl character Bridget, is just like, she's the sweetest girl in real life, but she is not a dweeb like that at all. So she did such a good job being so, like, meek and innocent. And then Chris O'Brockie did such a good job distinguishing his Eric character from his Derek character from Stab 5, and he had a lot of fun with it. He even wore a man wig through the whole thing, which was just funny, so he could look like himself but still be his twin brother and be slightly different. And Kwame's character just slays me through the whole movie. Like, he is just so funny and a blessing to work with. We love Kwame. Fred too. Fred was freaking amazing, and Fred and Kara Shields play the killers. One of my teachers actually plays Mrs. Doobie. My third grade math teacher plays Mrs. Doobie. But the ending of Stab 6 was actually filmed way ahead of time. In Stab 5, we kind of kept it a secret who the killers were, but a lot of people knew. And Stab 4, we kind of kept it a secret. I mean, everybody knew about me and Rihanna's characters, Teddy and Tammy, but not a lot of people knew about Jen's character in Stab 4 on set. They didn't know she was involved in the killings. And then Stab 5, like, unless you were a main character, you didn't know who the killers were because you didn't get a whole copy of the script. But in Stab 6, we were super, super secretive because this was our next movie. Our first 2 movies had done so well, and the endings had already gotten kind of messed up when we were doing Stab 5, and we had to redo them. So we were really keeping the ending of Stab 6 a secret, and we didn't want anyone to know who it was. And it's actually, if you don't know, it's a tribute to the original ending of Scream 2. But we had the actors come out early. Fred, who lived in New York at the time, came out 2 weeks before everybody else came out for a weekend. And him and I and the rest of the actors got together and we filmed the end sequence way before anybody could ever figure out what was going on. So a very select few people actually knew who the killers were while we were filming Stab 6. So it was this big secret on set, and it was really fun while we were filming because when we were in that house for the week, the other actors kept trying to figure out who the killers were. And we would strategically have people missing from scenes because they are the killers, or we were trying to make them look like the killers. So it was fun to watch the cast kind of debate back and forth over who the killers were, and to watch the killers who knew that they were the killers participate in other people's debates. Like, oh, no, I think it's Chris's character. No, it's probably that guy over there. No, it's her. It's definitely her. My favorite death scene in this is the death scene that is in the basement with Chris Wilson and Ashley Younger. And they're 2 of the 3 stoner characters in the movie. Maria was the other, and she died also in the basement, but separately. But the tag team duo of them dying is just great. Ashley Younger's character, Elise, gets a phone call from the killer, and she thinks it's part of the TV show. She thinks it's like a challenge for the show. So she tells Chris's character, oh my God, it's an audio challenge right now. Ghostface is on the phone. They're so high, they don't know what's going on. They think it's funny. And Chris's character doesn't want to play the game, and he ends up getting stabbed. And Ashley's character can't tell, and she's like, what's the matter with you, But that scene, to me, even writing it, I remember sitting there and just like cracking up writing, laughing, cracking up, laughing, writing it, because it was just so funny, even on the page, to think that this girl thought the whole thing was a gimmick, and then she doesn't realize it until she actually gets stabbed. Like, she watches her co-star get stabbed to death in front of her and still thinks it's part of the game, and doesn't realize it until the killer actually stabs her that it's a real knife and that she's actually getting killed. That whole section was actually a little bit different in the script too. The sex scenes between Kara's character and Fred's character weren't originally cut in that way, but I thought it was a funny way to kind of cover up the screaming. We worked it into the script too, like Stephanie's character even asked, like, did you hear that? He was like, so we have competition in the other room. Like, that was an original part of the script. We kind of added that in so we could have a cover-up for Ashley getting murdered. And it was also a great way to make it look like Fred's character and Kara's characters weren't the killers, because they can't be if someone's in the basement getting murdered unless they have a partner. And it was funny because it was both of them, but they did have a partner. They had a third, which was completely unexpected and hadn't been done in the Scream movies, so that was something new and exciting for us. The craziest part about Stab 6, I think, is the amount of killers in Stab 6. So it gets revealed first that Fred's the killer, and then Kara gets revealed as the killer. Then Mrs. Doobie makes her entrance as a killer, and then Corey saves the day, but ends up being a killer too, not connected to the other killers, just a killer of opportunity because he wants to be the only survivor. So he thinks he kills Kylie, then he tries to kill Shannon, then Shannon kills him, and he almost kills her. You see at the end of the movie that her eyes open, so she's still alive, and that was also a great debate, just so you know. We weren't sure where that was going to go. We weren't sure if she was still going to be alive in the next movie or if her eyes had just fluttered open, but she was still really going to be dead. And that's why we did that, was to kind of leave it up in the air. But then it gets revealed, even crazier level, that the 2 other survivors come out, and then Kylie comes out and shoots them in the head because her and Rachel are really part of the killings too, and they've been orchestrating the whole thing from behind the scenes. And they may not have been pulling all the strings, but they put everything together knowing that it would set up an opportunity for the next killers to make their moves. So they didn't really associate with Kara and Fred's killer characters behind the scenes, you know, like they didn't tell them who to kill or anything like that. They just kind of let it play out, hoping that they had cast a killer on their show, or that somebody was crazy enough to let it launch. Plus, you also find out that Rachel really left the door unlocked the whole time, so that gives plenty of time for any killer to sneak into the house, including Mrs. Doobie, who kills, or attempts to kill Dylan outside. She's the Scarecrow, Ghostface. Stab 6 just had like a lot of cool levels of stuff and a lot of levels of freedom for the actors too. We tried to let them ad-lib a little bit more in this one and bring more life to their characters. So much of what they say I wrote for them, but you know, the way they say it kind of is interpreted by them, and they add in a few things here and there. And then everybody that was in that house got to do a confessional, and that was really fun. Those were all ad-libbed. Everything that was said in those, we would kind of give them a little bit of coaching of what we want them to talk about, and then they would just go nuts. They would just get into character and sit in front of the camera and talk to the camera like they were on a reality TV show giving a confessional. And then I think the most fun part of that to me was editing it all together and seeing how cutting certain people back to back would make it even funnier, because one would say one thing and then someone else would say another, or even if they agreed, it was funny too, because you're like, oh man, that must be really bad. And then ending it with Rachel's manic depressive breakdown over what's going on her set was just epic. We got very lucky with the cast, and we didn't have a lot of drawbacks with like people quitting and stuff like that, and I think everyone that was in it was really committed to making it the best that it could be. The biggest negative of Stab 6 was that for the third time we changed cameras, and we bought what we thought was a better camera than the first two that we had. And it turns out in some ways it was, and in some ways it wasn't. In the sunshine, this thing did gorgeous shots, so we loved filming outside with it. Like the shot of the Kylie character and the Corey character walking up to the crime scene after the opening is one of my favorite shots, because it's just got this beautiful sunlight glowing off of them, and it looks so nice. But then as things get darker, it's trickier to work with the camera, and it gets grainier, which happens on all cameras, but there's no way to adjust that camera we were using. And the camera still didn't have a way to attach microphones to it or keep a separate audio system running. So everybody still had to project, and the audio in Stab 6, man, if we could just mute that whole movie and go back and dub in all the lines, at this point I think I would, because there's so much I love about Stab 6, but the audio is so bad, and I'm so sorry to all of you watching it. Like, we tried everything. We even tried running it through filters and stuff to fix the audio, and it just, we couldn't save it. We couldn't save it at all. Some of it's okay, but there are a lot of scenes that you're like, there's so much background noise I can't hear anyone. We're sorry, we know. The audio sucks in Stab 6. Again, the whole experience of Stab 6 was like a summer camp thing, and I think that was what enticed a lot of people into doing it. And we had a much bigger fan base, so like I said, we had a lot more out-of-state people, and it really did just become this huge extended family. Like, everybody got along, everybody helped out. You know, later on you'll hear actors complain in other movies about like helping us clean up and set up and stuff, but this film, this production, Stab 6, I think the team was so gung-ho, it was nuts. Like, while I was busy like setting up lights, the cast had pictures of the set from the day before, so they would start putting stuff out for me because they knew where it went, and the living room had to look the same, so this ghost face had to go there, and this picture had to be hung on this wall, and blah, 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 blah. And then clean up too, like everybody was on it, everybody was really willing to help, and there was blood flying everywhere, and Karen was so cool when we filmed in her house. She literally told us we could get blood on anything we wanted. So there's blood all over the floor, there's blood on the walls, there's blood everywhere in Stab 6, because we really wanted to up the gore factor. And getting the opportunity to have a location like that and a person who owns that location that kind of just says go for it is every amateur horror movie writer, director, producer, star's dream, because you just get to have fun, you know? And that's what it was. The cast had fun. Karen even provided them with food and snacks and stuff that we hadn't quite thought of. We brought a few things for people, you know, but Karen really went above and beyond and made Stab 6 awesome for everybody that participated in it, and we can't ever, ever, ever thank you enough for what you did, Karen. Stab 6 also marks the first time that you ever see two Ghostface killers on screen at the same time together, so that was cool during the big massacre scene. And leading into the big massacre scene is probably my favorite death scene that we've ever filmed, where Nicole Ward's character gets gutted. And that was just so much fun to film, and I think the effect of it played out so well that it's something that I'm actually really proud of. I think Stab 6 is also unique for us in the way that we set up the structure of the story and the way that we kind of went about production. Normally our storylines kind of follow like the main girl's storyline, the friends of the main girl's storyline, and then mine and Rachel's storyline. But Stab 6 had like all these storylines going on because there were so many new characters. So we were following the lead girl storyline. We were following Stephanie, who plays Shannon's storyline. Then we were following Kylie's storyline, too, and Rachel's storyline, along with all the cast members' storyline of the new TV show, and the storyline of Corey the cameraman. And then there were also these awesome 2 side players who were a part of the cast of the TV show, played by Erica Browning and Christian Ryan, and they were Lacey and Ryan, and they were kind of like Stab-obsessed fans, and it was really, really neat because Christian's character, Ryan, which was his last name, and his character name is actually a play on his real name. His name's Christian Ryan, his character's name is Ryan Christensen. I'm so creative, like I keep saying. They were really, really fun to work with. They were an actual couple in real life as well, and they lived in my actual apartment building, so that was even cooler too, that they could live in the same building and kind of be part of the storyline of the building as well. So there's another storyline. The building itself has its own storyline, because it's the opening scene of Stab 4. It's my headquarters, basically, in Stab 5, and it becomes Rachel's headquarters as well. And then in the same building is also where these characters, Lacey and Ryan, huge Stab fans, lived. So Ryan's character works as a crime scene photographer. He's introduced right after the opening. He's taking pictures of my dead body and other dead bodies that you don't get to see because Laura and Adam were there that day, but we didn't keep their clothing that they died in, so we couldn't redress them to show shots of their dead bodies where they were supposed to be. That was the first time we met Ryan, and then he goes home and reveals that he has stolen the Ghostface costume from the crime scene, which excites Lacey way more than it should, and then she leads him to the bedroom, and they open a closet and bam! They have masks, they have knives, they have bloody clothing worn by the victims, which was really cool because all the stuff that was actually in that closet was the real stuff that it's supposed to be. So like Amanda Constant's shirt that she got stabbed in Stab 5 is hanging in their closet, and it really was her shirt from Stab 5. Like all of the props you see in there are real, and they really are from what they say they're from. So that was really neat because we really did kind of have a shrine to our movies built inside there. Their characters were set up to be red herrings in a big way. When one of them gets eliminated from the show or when they have other interactions with their cast, they're almost always very off-putting and odd, and they challenge everybody, they say no to everybody, and they don't want to participate as much as everybody else, except for Erica's character, Lacey, is a little so stabby, fanatical that she's super excited to be, you know, in Karen's house and stuff like that. But the way that she treats people especially should indicate that she's a little bit of a lunatic, but she's not. They both actually become victims of the killers, and the Ryan character actually tries to save the day when he dies, so they're actually pretty honorable characters. They're just a little moody, I guess. Very few times have other people got to play the killer in the costumes. I tried to let the other killers always be in the costume at least once, so they can get the feeling of what it's like and see A, what I go through, and B, what they would be going through if they were the killers. So in Stab 5, Chris and Steve both got to take a turn behind the mask. And then in Stab 6, Fred got to be behind the mask, and Chris O'Brockie actually was behind the Scarecrow mask. Christian was also behind the mask, aside from me. So Kara didn't want a chance to play someone, which I thought would have been cool because it would have been interesting to see if you could tell it was a girl under our costume. And then even in the Stab movies after that, we always try to get the killer in the costume at least once so they can see what it feels like. The costume in Stab 6 actually got updated too. Like I said in the Stab 4 interview, I hated our costume. I really didn't like the streamers hanging off the arms, and I didn't like the hood. So I kept the main part of the costume because I still had some of the fabric left, and I redid the arms, the streamers on the arms, and I made a new hood for it. And that, I think, improved our costume tenfold. I still had to double layer the streamers on the arms, but they looked more like the ones in the Scream movie. They moved more, they were more fluid. They didn't look like socks hanging off Ghostface's arms, so that was nice. The hood was bigger, and it kind of gave it more of this Reaper look. The only negative thing about the hood that was also a positive was we kept having issues where the hood would fall off. And if you watch in Stab 5, like in Chris O'Brockie's death scene, when the killer's chasing him, it's actually, the hood you see is actually the hood of a coat I'm wearing under the costume because the hood kept falling off. So we added Velcro in Stab 6 into the hood, and that's something that we've continued to this day, and all of our masks have Velcro on the top of them. The masks in Stab 6 also got updated too. They had a different fabric put inside the eyes that made it a little more visible to see through the mask. And then all of the kind of like extra shine on the mask, we tried to dull down a little in Stab 6, because in a couple of our movies, like the mouth would catch a lot of light and it wouldn't look black. It would look like he had a big glowing white spot on the Ghostface mask. So we try to dull some of that stuff down too. And we were really big on fixing the imperfections in the masks in Stab 6. That started for us too. So if we purchase a mask at a store and say it wasn't perfectly filled in around the nose area, like we took paint or a Sharpie and we went in and we made the masks look better than they were. And this included reshaping them a couple of times too to get a different look so that the jaw was more straight and stuff like that. And there was no warping to any of the masks. But the biggest update, again, was the costume. And one of the main differences in our costume from the one in the Scream movies, too, is that ours don't open down the center. They're literally just like a slide-on giant robe. And we did originally have a version that like ripped open, and it was too problematic. Like no matter what was in it, you could kind of see in, and if you weren't all in black, you could see what was underneath. And even if you were all in black, it wasn't sparkly like the costume. So we decided to stick with a closed robe. What else could we talk about? Who else is a big character? The Shannon character in Stab 6 gets explored a lot deeper. She wasn't, like I said, originally in Stab 5, when she died, she wasn't supposed to carry on, essentially, and we brought her back at the end because people like the character so much. And Stephanie is such a phenomenal actress that we just had to bring it up to a new level for her to make this project exciting. So, dealing with the trauma from Stab 5, the Shannon character is now addicted to pills and kind of doesn't know if she's seeing things, and it takes her a minute to kind of click back into the fact that the killings are starting again and there really is another Ghostface killer out to kill her. And Stephanie gets, like a lot of the other lead girls, gets a wonderful tribute scene to the original Scream when Sydney gets the phone call. And she reenacts a lot of that in her attack scene in Stab 6. And that attack scene was so fun to film, I can't even describe it. Stephanie killed all the lines, and I had so much fun playing the voice of the killer and then playing the killer in the costume. But it was just like such a clumsy night. Like Stephanie and I got hurt so many times filming that scene. Not in a horrible way or anything like that, but we definitely had scrapes and bruises. I ran into an open door that I couldn't see out of my mask. Like I turned around and ran trying to chase Stephanie and smacked into the door and then fell to the floor because I had hit my head so hard that I went straight back down. Stephanie bounced her head off that railing that she gets slammed into. Both of us fell running up the stairs. My costume, the robe was really long and I kept stepping on the robe and I would slide and fall down the stairs. And then the picture that she smashes over my head, the first take we did of it, she hit me clear in the face with it and I thought we broke my nose. And then it's funny because we actually do that stunt in another Stab movie too, and both times that we do it, when she smashes the picture, the frame never breaks for some reason, and it gets stuck around the killer's neck, so the killer ends up wearing it as like a necklace for a little while, a little square black necklace. But that was such a fun attack scene to film, and there are tributes still to Sydney's attack scene in that too, because it is still based on the Sydney phone call. And we like to do a tribute like that in all of our movies, and I think it just gives the Scream fans a little something extra, like, oh, so this is how they would have done it if it was their movie. The partnership of Rachel and Kylie is great to me. It was interesting to kill myself off and then have to try to search for a replacement for me to be Rachel's partner in crime in this, and I felt like it had to be someone that is the complete opposite of Rachel in her personality, and that's definitely even Heidi in real life. So casting Heidi as Kylie Scott and deciding to expand that role, I think was such a great idea, and that's where it came from. Like I said, she was only in 2 little clips in Stab 5, and then that was it, and she wasn't supposed to be anything else. But when I needed a replacement for me, I originally thought of writing in like a younger version of me that was like Rachel's bitch, but I felt like Rachel still needed someone to challenge her, and a character like that wouldn't challenge her. So the idea to turn Kylie into Gail, essentially from Scream, was too good to resist, I think. Rachel's character needed someone to piss her off, to continue to drive her throughout the movie, because Josh was always screaming at her. So Kylie pisses Rachel off, but in a very, very different way. Kylie tries to take control, and Rachel doesn't like her ideas, and Rachel's in control, so she doesn't like that Kylie's trying to take any form of control at all. So it kind of becomes this power battle throughout the whole movie that only Rachel's character knows is going on, and Kylie's kind of oblivious to it, which is what I like about her, because the Kylie character is intelligent and powerful and obviously quick to act on her actions and resourceful, but Rachel's always kind of one-upping her, and Kylie doesn't know it because Kylie's character is also a little stupid. And Kylie's character actually didn't really test too well with people, and that was interesting for me. Like I said, she's based on Gil, so she's supposed to kind of be a bitch, but I think she's a bitch to the wrong people, and I don't think the audience liked that too much. So after Stab 6, we knew that Rachel and Kylie had a partnership, but Rachel knew for a long time that I was planning on killing off the Kylie character. Heidi didn't know this. However, Heidi never came back for another Stab movie, so maybe she did know deep down somewhere that I was going to kill Kylie in the opening of the next movie. But as far as the Stab project goes, inside the movie I thought it was cool to have something that we were actually working on in real life too. We had something called the Stab Project where we were trying to get our fans to create individual scenes from the first Stab, and we had a bunch of different teams working on it from all over the world. It was really cool, but not all the teams finished their projects, so there are still just individual scenes from our Stab project on YouTube that you can check out, and some of them are amazing, like the end scenes from Mexico, the opening scene is a guy in drag, so it's just fantastic, and it goes places you wouldn't expect it to, and everybody did a really good job, but nobody ever finished it. But inside of Stab 6, there's something called the Stab Project as well, and that's the name of the reality TV show that they're on. And that idea was almost from Halloween Resurrection, where they all are kind of trapped and they have live feeds on them. But I wanted to make it a competition show because I love stuff like that, like America's Next Top Model and stuff. And I felt like Kylie would be hosting a show that was more like America's Next Top Model, and Rachel would be hosting something to ensure the fact that she was going to have a successful movie out of the product of this, especially if they were casting from this. The Stab Project was actually a really exciting part of that movie to me, and the competitions were really cool. Stab 6 is probably one of my favorite Stab movies that we've made so far, just because it was so different, and we had so many cool tributes to our movies and to other movies, and cameos from people. Like we had Chris Doobie pop up for a cameo at the end there, and in the middle, and that wasn't planned, so that was kind of cool that we just worked that in. And taking all these characters, like the Shannon characters, to so many different places, and the Rachel character to so many different places that they haven't been before, was so intriguing and interesting. And honestly, I think Stab 6 is probably my favorite Stab that we've done so far. We were so lucky to have Karen and her husband again helping us out and letting us use their house. It was actually funny too, because Stab 6 was all filmed with all the prop knives. There wasn't a single real buck knife on set in Stab 6. They were all fake this time, which is the only time that's ever happened in our productions, and we just decided they weren't shiny enough, and that's why we eventually started using real knives again too, and the fake knives. But the fake knives kept breaking while we were on set, especially while we were filming the ending with Stephanie and Jeff. They would be stabbing each other, and they'd actually hit each other, and these knives would snap. So Karen's husband actually does work from home in his basement, so he has a lot of tools and stuff for his job. He would fix our knives for us as they kept breaking on set, and they're just always so helpful. Like, so having them around during Stab 6 again was just like freaking fantastic. We love them. They took good care of us, and like I said before in the Stab 5 interview, we can never thank them enough for everything they've done for us. The entire time we filmed Stab 5, it really was cold out. Like, it was snowing all the time, and we were outside a lot, and it was freezing, and it was quite the opposite in later movies. The entire time we filmed Stab 6, it was 1,000,000 degrees outside and inside, and we were all dripping sweat. So there's really, timing's a weird thing for us with weather, and we try to think about that more as production goes on in other movies. Once I had to literally pull everyone aside and scream at the group of everyone for being loud during filming, because it was just, they were having so much fun that I literally had to be like, all right guys, chill. Like, it's gone on for too long. You guys have to be quiet. And I remember, like, people even cried, like Mandy cried when I yelled at the whole group of everyone. So it was upsetting, and I try never to be that guy, but on a rare occasion you have to be. I'm Joshua Dudley, and I am the writer, director, and executive producer of Stab 7 Knife of the Hunter, and I also play a ghost version of myself in Stab 7 Knife of the Hunter. The first version of Stab 7 that we tried to put together was, I would say, more in the vein of Scream 4. It was about the Shannon character coming home and returning to her hometown to kind of uncover and protect people from a new string of murders that's happening. And there's a new Sarah Campbell, and that was fun for us to introduce because the fans loved the Sarah Campbell character, and we did bring back Veronica in Stab 5 that takes over the Sarah Campbell character, but her movie never got finished, so you never really get to see Sarah Campbell. So we introduced a new Sarah Campbell, and the basic idea is that Rachel and Ghost Josh are trying to write the next Stab movie by creating a copycat killer that's trying to kill off essentially the characters from Stab 4 instead of the actors, because by this time, most of the actors are dead or anyone involved in the Manchester massacres. I don't know, I'm still to this day not super enthused about that script. I don't think it brought the level of reality up from Stab 6, you know? Like, I actually think it took it down a peg and like kind of grounded it instead of making it explode like a finale should have. And so there is, sad to say, a part of me that is happy that we weren't able to film it because people kept quitting. In Knife of the Hunter, my character is actually a ghost, and he's working with Rachel the whole time to kind of plot the next movie and try to encourage her. And there really are some like ghost effects, like he appears in like a puff of smoke and he's kind of translucent sometimes and stuff, and that stuff was fun to film because it was just a little bit more challenging. So that was probably one of my favorite parts of Knife of the Hunter, was the kind of supernatural idea behind it too, because that's not something we play with a lot. Like, we've had fortune tellers and stuff like that, but we don't normally do ghosts or anything like that in the Stab movies. So it was a little over the top, and I thought the fans would think it was a little over the top too. But it all gets explained at the end, which unfortunately we didn't get to film. But at the end you would have learned that my character was still alive, and he had faked his death, and he was actually using a hologram to get the ghost look and have all the special effects of being a ghost. And that's how he got away with everything. But sadly, like I said, we didn't get to film the ending of that, so you didn't ever get to see the big reveal that I'm alive, and there was a good explanation. I wasn't actually a ghost, I was a hologram, and I was controlling everything from a computer. That's all. Stab 7 Knife of the Hunter was plagued with problems from the start. We had a great cast. I was really excited to work with a lot of them, and many of the problems involved actually weren't cast related, so that's nice. A few times we did have missing actors and stuff like that, but there were so many production problems with Stab 7, it was insane. We set it so that we were filming in fall. That way we wouldn't be sweating our asses off like we were in Stab 6 or freezing our asses off like we were in Stab 5. It was filmed set around Halloween time, which we had never done either, and that was exciting for us to have a Stab film that was themed around Halloween. But then we forgot that fall nights are also really cold too. Like really, 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 really cold, because we live in New England. Everything basically we films in New Hampshire. So it is cold here fall through winter and spring, and then super hot in the summer. Like, it sucks a little bit. Production began pretty smoothly until we couldn't get Heidi to come back to play Kylie. And the opening, which we had already started filming, and we had filmed up to basically almost a death scene. Like, a girl gets stabbed like twice, I think you see in the final cut of the movie that we ended up releasing. But the second night of filming, the opening couldn't happen because we couldn't get Heidi back to play Kylie. And that was a huge issue. And like I said, we loved working with Heidi, and she was fun, but she's also a diva. And she was, in Stab 6, working with Heidi, she was the only actress that didn't really contribute to the teamwork, I would say. She was very about learning her own lines and being in her own space. And, you know, that's something we respected, but, like, the entire cast would be helping clean up or set up or something, and she wouldn't participate. So that was rough. But, you know, we being real here. We real. Yeah, so in Stab 7 Knife of the Hunter, we couldn't get Heidi to come back to play Kylie, and we were in the middle of filming the opening, and then we realized we had to do a rewrite. And there was just no saving it basically from that point, we decided to move on and film other scenes. So we continued with the other actors and figured that we would go back to the opening, because the girl that was playing the girl in the opening scene, Alicia Winslow was her name in real life. She played Alana in the movie. And Michael Benoit, who played her boyfriend. They were both willing to come back and finish filming the opening. So we moved on to other things and started filming as much of the other production stuff as we could. And at this time, Rachel had actually moved to a different state. So I was back to kind of filming everything on my own that was filmed around here. And we did travel to film the Campbell opening scene because Rachel's mom is in it and playing the Campbell mother. And we filmed at Rachel's house in Pennsylvania at the time. So some of the cast and I took a road trip to film that scene. But the majority of it was filmed here in New Hampshire. So I didn't have Rachel by my side, and that I think was a big struggle for me too, because I didn't have that extra pair of hands and eyes and extra insight that I would normally have and that I'd grown accustomed to, you know. So Stab 7 Knife of the Hunter was hard right from the beginning just because Rachel wasn't here. So Rachel and I, though, we had a great time filming, and all of our scenes, I believe we filmed in one day. Like, we just knocked it out from morning till night, everything that we had to do back to back, put it in order of when it had to be filmed because of daylight, and then just knocked it all out in one day. So our parts in Stab 7 Knife of the Hunter were actually really easy to film. It was the rest of production that was hard. The part of Hadley that was eventually played by Jalisa Turobene, I love saying her last name, was originally played by a different girl who we thought was going to be fun because she was really pretty and she looked like a supermodel, so we thought it'd be fun if she was playing crazy at the end like Kara did in Stab 6, and because this character turns out to be one of the killers. And this girl, who will remain nameless, that was originally cast, showed up. We don't even know what she was on. She was drunk, she was high, she was on everything, and we're trying to film this scene outside, and she's literally falling over like multiple times while the camera was on her. Even if she was standing still, she would just straight drop to the ground. And that was our first like, we're gonna have to replace this character and refilm this now too. So now we're missing Heidi from production, and now we have to replace this actress from production too. And this is starting to almost cost us other actors who don't want to have to come back and refilm scenes that they've already filmed. So that was a really big issue, but replacing that actress with Jalisa was great because Jalisa was cool, and we always tried to add a level of diversity as our movies go on. And Jalisa kind of fit that lesbian stereotype really well, so it was cool to have her in production. And she was not an actress at all, and we just finagled it that we could get her to do this because it was such a cool part. And I'm sad we didn't get to film the ending with them actually, because I think she actually probably would have surprised us and really shined in the end when she got to play a little bit crazy. What we did film with Stab 7 came out pretty cool. We finally upgraded our camera and our costume. So I made a whole new Ghostface costume out of new fabric, and to me it came out gorgeous. And it was basically a one-size-fits-all costume, which was not like our last costume. Our last costume was a little more constricting. This costume was huge, and there was a couple of reasons for that. Like I said, I wanted it to fit multiple people, and I wanted me to always look bigger when I was in it. In the first couple of movies, I would have to like pad myself under the costume by wearing like a puffy winter coat. So in this movie, I made the robe really, really big, so that it gave me a lot of extra space and you couldn't tell who was underneath it. And the robe itself was so heavy that it just like, it takes up so much room and it hangs open. And it's actually, this fabric that's behind me is actually what the robe is made out of. On camera, you can't really tell that it's kind of fuzzy looking, but it's a really heavy material. So the new version of the costume not only came out better because somehow I was able to sew it better, but the fabric just reads so well on screen that it's just absolutely beautiful. But like I said, it was really, really heavy to wear, like especially if you're not if you're a skinny little person like I am. It's quite a lot. The costume itself probably weighs about 20-25 pounds, just because it's such a heavy fabric. But so that got updated, and we got this camera that we're still filming with now. This interview is being filmed on the same camera that we filmed Stab 7 Knife of the Hunter and everything else with up until this point. We've never upgraded from it, even though we could, because it is still not anywhere near the best camera on the market, but it works for us and it puts out nice 1080p quality and stuff like that. But it's a Sony NEX F3, if anyone's wondering. But Stab 7 reaped a few of the benefits that it had a much higher production value and budget, like Stab 6. We actually spent a lot more money on Stab 5, 6, and 7 as they went on. Each movie got more expensive. Stab 4, we basically filmed for no money. Stab 5, we filmed for like a couple $100. Stab 6, we filmed for like $1,000. And then by the time we were getting Stab 7, we're hitting multiple thousands of dollars because now we're buying new knives and replacement prop knives, and we redid the costume. We bought new cameras. The lighting got a big upgrade starting in Stab 6. It's funny too because some of the lights that are even on me right now are still from Stab 6. Like, they're the same exact light bulbs. This is like 6 years later and these light bulbs still work. I don't know, it's kind of crazy to me to think about. So it was really, really sad that we weren't able to finish it because everybody put a lot of work into it. And the people that did show up, you know, like, they showed up. Everybody brought their A game. They showed up. Like, everyone was really embodying the characters that they were playing, and it was a bunch of new players that we hadn't had before. We were introducing all these new actors into a family that kind of no longer existed. Like, Rachel wasn't there for a lot of it, and a lot of the former cast members that had been there for multiple movies weren't there, and it was really challenging. And honestly, maybe that's part of the downfall. Maybe part of the downfall is that, you know, the family part of it kind of ended once we hit Knife of the Hunter, because it was just like there was nobody left. Everybody had died on screen more than once in most cases, and it wasn't really possible to just keep having people play twins and triplets and quadruplets. And then, like I said, the amount of people that wouldn't come back was hard. We actually had a hard time convincing Stephanie to come back again to play Shannon. She was really busy, and she wanted more of a challenge if she was going to come play Shannon again. So we wrote Shannon more as a mentor in this one, and she was in a better place. She wasn't in such a dark place. And I'm not sure that Stephanie liked that. You know, when I was writing, I thought it would be cool to have Shannon's character basically mentoring the new Sarah Campbell because she's basically grooming her replacement. I don't think Stephanie was done dealing with Shannon's past. So we worked a lot to kind of work together to bring more of Shannon's past into the history of what was going on with her now in that movie. And she went to a darker place, like she darkened her hair for the movie to look like a new version of Shannon. She wasn't a blonde Shannon anymore. She was now a brunette Shannon who was a well-known therapist and published author. She had a book about therapy out as well based on her experience, and she even had her own personal assistant that traveled with her, played by the fabulous Tajora Davis, who we love, 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 love. And Tajora, I'm so sorry you ever only got to film that one scene that you were in. Stephanie, playing the lead character, was subject to a lot of this. A lot of times she would show up for filming along with a lot of other people, and then we couldn't film after she had just driven 2 hours to be here to play this part, and then we couldn't film because people were missing. So there are times, like you'll see like the Halloween party scene that you'll see where we're missing hundreds of extras and even certain characters are missing from the scene, but we still tried to film as much as we could because Stephanie was there, so we wanted to accommodate her driving these freaking 2 hours to be there, even though fucking people didn't fucking show up like they said they would. As much as it irritated me and everyone else involved in the production, it really got to Stephanie to the point that the next time it happened, she was done. We were all driving out to set to the location that we were using as Lindsay's character, Mackenzie's house. We're literally minutes away from getting to this place when the location calls and cancels on us and tells us that after considering it and after us already filming there once or twice, that they just couldn't handle having to be quiet while we were filming, and a whole long list of other bullshit of why we could no longer use this location. So Stephanie, this location was quite a ways for all of us, so it was even longer for Stephanie, and her hearing that we couldn't film while she was already halfway to a place that was like 4 hours away did not make her happy. So needless to say, she was done with production, and the agreement between us was that either we fix it absolutely right away or it's just not happening anymore for her, and we couldn't fix it, so we had to shut down production. And a lot of people will hear that and think, oh, so it's Stephanie's fault that production was shut down. No, not at all. Absolutely not at all. Like, She's not the reason it shut down. It is a factor that our lead actress wasn't there, but so many other actors quitting and not showing up, and production setbacks like losing locations caused her to quit. So, you know, it isn't her fault. It's a big, huge collection of why we have a hashtag Stab7 is cursed, because both versions of it is just plagued with problems, and people just commit to things and don't follow through, and it's awful. Like, look at the amount of people in this documentary right now. Every single Stab star or a person that has appeared in a Stab movie was offered the chance to come and do one of these interviews. And during the coronavirus outbreak, they were offered the chance to even film their own interviews from home. Look how many people are in this interview, in this documentary. Not many. That shows you the level of commitment. Yes, sure, some of them have moved far away and stuff like that, but like I said, they also have the options to film these at home. So we try not to call people out and point fingers at anyone ever for productions being shut down. And sometimes it is one person's fault. And in the case of Stab7 Knife of the Hunter, it is not one person's fault, it is a lot of people's fault. But in the case of people not coming back to do interviews and stuff for like this documentary, that's a case of them either no longer caring about the productions, or a case that I pissed them off by asking them to do so many projects all the time, or I literally pissed them off by yelling at them on set when something didn't go right, or offset when they quit productions and stuff like that. So there were just so many issues that just stacked up over the years that it's super intense. Not only did we lose Stephanie in Stab7, but we also lost Mandy. Mandy was another one that, well, while we were trying to film, shit just kept happening. And every time we were supposed to film one of her scenes, she would be ready to show up, and then shit would happen either to her or to us. So that is another huge contributing factor into why Knife of the Hunter didn't come out, is because we weren't able to continue to have our lead actresses, not just one, but multiples. So, and it's just sad too, because a lot of what we filmed was the in-betweener shit, so we didn't get to a lot of the fun stuff, like all the death scenes and stuff, and those are like challenging to film, but they are super, super, super fun to film. So that's my biggest regret, is that we didn't get to film more death scenes, because I think even releasing the movie with more of the death scenes would have made the fans a little bit happier, because they would have got a little more ghost face, they would have got more blood, and then you can kind of understand the storyline. But like I said, we couldn't even film the ending on this one, so again, one of the reasons we should always remember to film the ending first. Lots of great new characters in Stab7, lots of different setups and locations. We showed you way more of Manchester than you've ever seen, that the town that all these movies are based in, so that was really cool to get to explore that finally, and to show you some of Manchester, New Hampshire, because it looks like we live in East Bumfuck in the first couple of movies, because you see like 2 houses and trees. And then finally you get the expansion in the Stab7s, that you get to see a lot more of like the cities and the cityscapes and the surrounding towns and areas and stuff like that. So that was really cool to get to work in, and not something that we had thought about even until this production. So that was neat. Once all is said and done, I think what we do with the next version of Stab7 is even better. So maybe there really was a reason that Stab7 Knife of the Hunter was never finished, because it just wasn't good enough for us to release to our fans. I'm Joshua Patrick Dudley, and I am the writer, director, and executive producer of Stab7, and I also played an artificial intelligence version of myself in the movie. My character in the newest version of Stab7 is actually like a Siri or an Alexa. I was waiting to hear if any of my devices went off when I said that. But he is a computer program that apparently my character in the other Stab movies was a genius. He has built to help Rachel after his death. So he's kind of a guide to helping Rachel with Stab movies, and Rachel kind of uses him still as a friend. But he, interestingly enough, is a very multi-platform app. Like, he can be on your phone, he can be on your tablet, he can be on your computer, he can be on your TV. Josh is a special character in this one. It's funny too, because This was another example of me trying to write something for myself that was quick and easy so that I could focus on being behind the camera. My character died in Stab 6 and I wanted to maintain that. Unlike Stab 7 Knife of the Hunter, where I was on screen a lot as a ghost, all of my filming I was able to do in about 40 minutes for Stab 7, so that was really cool, and then I just applied some effects to it. And it was cool too because I filmed it before everything else, so when Rachel was filming, she actually got to interact with something that was kind of already pre-recorded, that had enough space left in between that she could interact with it and talk back to it. So I didn't even have to act live either. I did all my stuff once, and then everything else was just, everyone else acted to what was pre-recorded of me. So that was actually really neat. The second Stab 7 is probably my second favorite Stab script after Stab 6. It was just, after the first version of Stab 7, felt like such a flop to me, not just because we didn't finish it, but because I wasn't totally in love with the script. The new Stab 7 was like redemption for me. Like, I realized that it really was our finale. Like, Stab 7 really is supposed to be the last Stab movie, so even if we did continue the series and do like a Stab 8 or something, Stab 7 really is the big shebang, the big finale, and that's what it had to be. So I thought for a long time after we shut down production on Stab 7 about what I would do if we were ever going to do a new Stab 7. And I knew I wanted to because I told the fans we would make Stab 4, 5, 6, and 7. So that was something I really, 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 really wanted to do. And I just couldn't come up with a good idea. And then MTV announces that they're going to do a Scream TV series. And then it clicks in my head. Oh, well, that would be neat if there was a Stab TV series, so why don't we do something like that? Maybe it's the production of another Stab TV series, just like Stab 6. Stab 6 was the production of a Stab reality TV competition show, not of an actual, like, dramatic TV series. So what if it was one up the level of a TV show is now an actual TV show scripted? I'm like, that's a good place to start. And then they reveal the new mask that they're going to use for the MTV Scream shows. So I'm like, oh, well, that would be cool if that was the new mask in the Stab TV show too. And then that got me thinking, well, changing masks is actually kind of a neat idea. And how can we use that to our advantage in the movie to get something different out of the Stab movies? And that's when it like clicked. Previously I had drawn a few different versions of Ghostface masks, and I don't remember what I drew them for. But it was like a Freddy Krueger Ghostface mask and a Jason Ghostface mask. I'm like, that would be neat if we mashed up these horror icons with Ghostface. And that became kind of like the main idea of the story of this new Stab 7, was that it was basically going to be a tribute to every horror movie, not just the Scream movies, but we were going to get to see Ghostface play Jason. We were going to get to see him play Leatherface, Freddy Krueger. And we designed all different variations of this. Like, there was a Chucky variation that didn't get used, a Michael Myers variation that didn't get used, a Pinhead version that didn't get used. And you can see some of these when my app character is on the screen. They kind of scroll by at the top of him. So all of the designs for the different ideas that we had for them. And we did end up executing quite a few of them on screen, but a few of them you didn't get to see, and that was really sad, like the Devil Face one. And a lot of people thought the Devil Face one that's in the finale of Stab 7 was just because Fun World had released a Devil Face mask. But no, our Devil Face was actually a tribute to the TV show Scream Queens that I loved, and it was the Red Devil that was mashed up with Ghostface. And again, you guys get to see a preview of our costume from it on Facebook and like Twitter and stuff like that, but it wasn't in the movie. So that part really didn't get explained to you. But if you read the script, it is explained in the script that it's a Scream Queens mashup. After I came up with the ideas of mashing up Ghostface and having a TV show, I had to come up with what we were going to do with no Shannon character. And that kind of became the idea of the movie to me then, was that who is the lead girl? That was kind of a thing that was left over from Stab 7 Knife of the Hunter, where at the end there was this kind of like lead girl showdown. There were all of these saw traps at the end of Stab 7 Knife of the Hunter, and it was actually supposed to be Jen Mallard and Shannon and the new Sarah Campbell, and they were all in these Saw-style traps and competing to be the new lead girl of the series. Would have been a cool ending. Sadly, we never got to film it. I rented a hotel for everybody, and we were filming all of the stuff that happens in that hotel in this big hotel suite. And I was actually living in the hotel with Mark and Dave, who were two of the other actors in the movies. And it was great. It was like living in a frat house. Like, I loved living with them. Mark and Dave, I love you guys. I have so much fun working with you. I include them in like pretty much all my projects all the time now because we just hit it off so well. They're like acting and filmmaking brothers to me. Like, I really enjoy their company. And it's to the point that we're so friendly that we spend a good majority of our time together picking on each other, or I'm hitting on them. One of the two. But I love them. So that was a really fun experience. And Mark graciously helps me out by playing the killer quite a bit in this movie. Mark's a really big, muscly guy. So I love playing the killer and I love being in the costume, and I am several times in the movie, but I put Mark in the costume as much as I could because he's much more intimidating under the robe and the mask than I am. Like, I would fucking run from Mark, even without the costume, because he is that much bigger than me. But multiple people played the killer multiple times in this movie. Like, Dave plays the TV killer, Daniel, our special effects makeup artist, actually plays the Freddy Ghostface killer for a little while too, before Mark plays him. And I play the TV killer. I play the real Ghostface a few times. Like I said, production was really spread out, but the first half we were all in that hotel. And it started off with, like, we were filming a party scene because it involved all these characters. It was neat to see all the cast meeting each other for the first time and stuff because, again, this was a new experience. It wasn't a lot of the regular people that we had in other productions. So to have all these new people having this new experience, and a lot of them, again, mixed levels of acting experience. Some people had acted before, some people never had. Some people I cast just because they were pretty. Some people I cast just because they were my friends or we worked together again. And, you know, it's a horror movie. We need cattle to slaughter. And this was the finale. Like I said, I wanted fireworks. So there's a lot of bodies. People die multiple times. The same people die multiple times. They die on screen on the TV show, and then they die in the movie as their characters too. And that was a way for us to get in more death scenes because that's what we were really lacking in the first version of Stab 7. We never got to film any of the death scenes, so we were really focused on getting a lot of death scenes in. And we were, thankfully, able to film some of the death scenes before we had to shut down production again. But not all of them, and not some of the best ones. And again, we didn't get to film the ending. We had a lot of fun in the hotel. The cast really got along for the most part at the beginning. The first couple of days went very, very smoothly. Everybody, for the most part, knew their lines and came prepared and really knocked stuff out of the park. And then we kept rolling for a few days, and you know, it would take them a little bit longer to get to stuff because they were stuck in this hotel and we had done so many other scenes and we were running out of time and we only had this hotel for 4 days, so we had to get all these scenes done. So it was a tight schedule and they had a lot of lines to learn, a lot of acting to do, a lot of dying to do and screaming and running and all the behind the scenes fun that we had too. I think it was an interesting experience for a lot of them and stressful for a lot of them too because it was very, very fast paced and it was working well. If the rest of the movie could have gone at that fast of a pace, we would have been able to finish it if we didn't have so many setbacks with people quitting and stuff like that. We would have been able to knock it all out very, very quickly. So the first half of filming went super smoothly, super quickly, super well. Everything that we filmed in the hotel was awesome until the very last day. 2 of the girls showed up hours and hours and hours and hours late for filming, which caused a fight between them and Dave because Dave is a parent and he needed to be somewhere for his kids and he was now staying there because of them. And then they also showed up unprepared and didn't know their lines. So this kind of set me off too because, you know, we've had issues with people quitting and it's a big thing and I lost my shit. Like, I'm not gonna lie, I screamed at this girl. But she was unapologetic and it was really upsetting. Like, we're gonna remain nameless here again, but that part was really upsetting to me because she came in after making all of us wait, including the 7 other actors that were there and me, and didn't apologize to us, refused to apologize to us, and then wasn't prepared to film. It was really rude, so I lost my shit, and I'm not gonna lie about that. She is one of a few times that I have actually flipped out on people. It didn't work out well. The actress threatened to quit, which slowed down filming even more. And we finally get her to come back and work out all the shit, and then she's rude through all the filming. There's a fine line of me trying to defend the actors and losing my shit, and I really was trying to stand up for everybody else that was there. But it pissed me off to the point that I literally lost it. And that's one of those moments too that I wish Rachel was there. But aside from that moment and one of the actresses being a little drunk while filming her death scene, filming at the hotel was fantastic. Another really cool scene we did was a tribute to the fortune teller scene that we had done in Stab 5. So we had another fortune teller. This time Devin's character went to go see a fortune teller, and who also predicts her death. And the fortune teller asks what happens to the fortune teller in the other Stab movies, and Devin's character tells her that she gets her throat slit. So of course, our fortune teller gets her throat slit too. Fun fact, since we're talking about the fortune teller, the set for it in Stab 7 was actually built up in a loft inside of my apartment, and these hanging up behind me right now are the walls of the fortune teller's tent. Filmed out by my mom's pool for one of the scenes, and that was a really fun scene to film. It was a really nice day. It actually looks nicer on camera than it was. It was a little chillier than that day than what it appears to be on camera, because I actually warmed it up once I was editing it, because it was a little gray looking, so everything's got more of a golden, shiny hue to it in the actual footage that you see on camera. But it was a little gray that day, so it's actually kind of funny to see the difference in the original footage of that. But that was really fun, and filming around the pool was fun. It was something I've always wanted to do, was a death scene in a pool. When I was little, me and my twin sister used to play kill each other in the pool all the time and throw each other in and stuff like that. So it was fun to reenact that in the exact same pool that I used to pretend in. That was a really interesting experience. And the house, you know, that we filmed at, it was cool to go back to my mom's house to film some of Stab 7, because that's where we filmed most of Stab 4. So it was, for the finale, it's kind of like a hidden little throwback. You don't even really realize it's the same house, but it is. Then all the shit went down. So we shut down production because Mandy got pregnant. Then we lose Quinlan. So we're holding off on their scene, taking that first break to regroup and figure out what we were going to do while Mandy was pregnant. We couldn't film any of her scenes. And in that time, the person, Quinlan, who played her partner, Theo Harrelson in it, he was supposed to be her partner through the whole movie, ended up moving to Hawaii because it took us so long to get production to start up again. So then we had to replace his character. So I wrote in a different cop character and an excuse for her to be missing for the scene that Quinlan was in, because I still wanted to use Quinlan because he did such a great job, and it wasn't his fault that he couldn't keep filming his scenes. We had another actress, Tara, who had filmed stuff in the hotel as well, and then in real life was attacked, not like serial killer attack, but was mugged in real life, and it was a very traumatic situation. And all she had left to film was this other attack scene for the TV show inside of the movie. But she was so traumatized by her real life attack that she couldn't come back and finish filming. Like, the thought of having to film another death scene would have put her in a mental ward, and we couldn't have that. So we had to come up with an excuse to replace Tara. So I came up with the character of Rory, who's basically a stunt double for this character, and I thought that would alleviate some of the pressure off of Tara, and that we could get this girl to come play and do the death scene parts, but Tara would only do the acting, but it just didn't end up working out. So the way I ended up rewriting it in the script is basically everything that Tara hadn't filmed yet, basically Rory would now take over, and it would kind of be written in that it was weird that she was taking over, and that all of the shots of Tara from the TV show were actually of Rory's character, you know? So it was a big, long thing to try to replace a character, but that was one of many rewrites. I think I did 9 rewrites on this movie, and that was just the first one. And then the break also caused us to lose one of our leading actresses, Lindsay. And Lindsay has done a bunch of other stuff with us, and she's a great actress, and she's super fun to work with, and she's so inclusive on set, and she wants to be a part of everything. So it was so painful to lose Lindsay. But she moved away in the process as well and wasn't able to finish filming. I also did another rewrite to replace Lindsay's remaining scene also with the Rory character. So Rory ends up actually being the lead girl at the end of this, and it's well deserved if she had ever gotten to film all those other scenes, because she was already replacing all the other lead girls anyway. So it actually kind of worked out kind of funny. We couldn't get Amanda to come back and film her death scene with the Leatherface ghost face because she too was pregnant, so she can no longer run around. So she has a twin sister, so we were even going to bring in her twin sister at one point and have her twin sister play her body from behind and just use close-up of Amanda's face during the screaming and the death scenes and stuff like that, but that never panned out either. We just kept losing actors. People would commit and then not show up. So now we're going back at the beginning of the second leg of production to fix things. We filmed a lot of stuff at my old house. All the stuff between Rachel and the Joshua tablet and stuff, we kind of knocked all that stuff out in like 1 or 2 days. I think it was just 1 day. Rachel kills it, and we've been playing these same characters for a while now, so it's really easy for us to just kind of jump into it. A full year after we had filmed in the hotel, Rachel and I went back And it was Rachel's first time getting to see the hotel, and there were still like blood stains on some of the floors and stuff that we found. It was actually kind of funny. But we filmed a bunch of Rachel stuff a full year after. Same thing with some of like the fight sequences and stuff like that. The big fight scene between the Freddy Ghostface and the TV show killer. And Mark and Dave have a lot to say about that, so I'm gonna let them do a lot of the talking, but it took a lot of rehearsal. It was really fun. It was stunt heavy. There was a lot of interruptions, like neighbors interrupting us, lighting, fog, like it was really funny too. And it's actually funny to think about the fact that the killer in the bedroom that's killing Devin's character is actually Dan in the costume. And then when he walks out of the bedroom from killing Devin, it's now Mark in the costume of the Freddy Ghostface. So I don't know, it's kind of funny to think about. And actually the beginning, the entrance of Freddy Ghostface where he comes in, that's actually Mark too. So it's Mark, and then it's Dan, and then it's Mark again. The other actress that is replacing the Quinlan Cobb character decides that now she's not gonna show up. And this enrages Mandy to the point of no return. Mandy has just had a baby and has gone through crazy amounts of rigorous exercise to get herself back down to look like what she looked like when we first started filming. And now she can't film her scenes because another one of her scene partners is missing. So this causes her to completely quit production. And that was the absolute final nail in the coffin for Stab 7. There was no saving it after that because Mandy's character is involved in so much more. There were so many scenes that she didn't get to film that if we cut all those scenes, the movie would only run about an hour if we were lucky. And then she was also involved in the ending, very heavily involved in the ending of the movie. So if we didn't have her, we couldn't film the ending. And if we didn't have the girl playing her cop character, we couldn't film the ending. So in other words, we couldn't film the ending. One magical thing that did happen during the production of the new Stab 7 was that Stephanie and I had a nice long chat, and we wrote her a really cool cameo. And we actually wrote her this really huge part at first that was like this big opening that explains how she was connected to everything and all of the killers, and she's been running the show this whole time, and she's actually the creator of the TV killer, and she's been working with the TV killer, and then the TV killer turns on her and kills her, and she's now the opening kill. A long time ago, Stephanie made an agreement with her grandmother that if she ever got killed in a movie or something, she wouldn't die on screen. So Stephanie doesn't die on screen, it's more of an implied death, but she is the opening kill. We kill off the Shannon character, and this is for a couple of different reasons. Again, like I said, it's a pattern of ours to kill off our opening girls. And because Stephanie couldn't commit to doing another movie where people were going to keep quitting, and she kept showing up. So this really gave her and I the chance to explore something creatively and get along and have fun while doing it. And she had a lot of input on the scene too, and the ideas for the scene. It gave us a chance to reunite and not have to worry about anybody else ruining it. So, fun fact about that scene too, that is filmed in an apartment that I was living in that I actually no longer lived in, and it didn't have electricity, and that's why that scene is so dark. Literally everything is filmed by candlelight or by these little teeny tiny portable lights that we used in Thursday the 12th, those little lanterns that we had. That's how we lit that entire scene, and we actually filmed a bunch of other stuff too. You can see some of it in the bloopers of Stephanie like kind of descending into madness, and you see her like laughing on the side of a bed. We did some weird shit with her in a mannequin and in a bathtub and strobe lights, and we filmed a bunch of cool stuff that didn't get used because we decided not to overextend that storyline. And I did have a different cut originally. I kept a fuller, longer version of the opening where she actually converses with the killer, and I don't know what happened to the footage. I can't find it anywhere, like literally anywhere, so that's really depressing that we can't release the slightly extended version of the opening. It was really cool to have Stephanie come back and give the Shannon character a proper ending. You know, if she can't go on, at least we got to kill her off. But we did film an actual, you can watch it on YouTube too, on our channel. We did film a version of it where she escapes too, in case we wanted to include her in something. Because originally we were thinking about bringing her back for the ending as well and having her either save the day or ruin it. But none of that panned out because production didn't finish. So lots of highs of making Stab 7. I loved all the different ghost faces, and the masks that we had made for the productions were just phenomenal. Brendan Vesey, who did the Freddy Krueger and the Leatherface mask, just did a freaking fucking goddamn phenomenal job on his mask. And then my buddy Ruben Morales helped us out with 3D designing the Jason Ghostface mask that we had 3D printed. Like I said, Stab 7 was probably my favorite script after Stab 6, so it was really, really upsetting to see it get shut down. And disappointing to our fans. This is now the second movie in a row that we've shut down. And it's just like, what the fuck, yo? Like, get your shit together. And, you know, we tried. Like, I can't tell you how much money I spent on Stab 7. And Stab 6, too. Stab 6, we increased our budget substantially to buy all those extra Ghostface things. But in this version of Stab 7... like, the Jason Ghostface mask alone cost like $170 to make once it was all said and done. And then every extra robe and costume was like another $100. And then the custom products for the masks is another $100. And then all the extra effects and all the new lighting. And we had all that special flame lighting and stuff like that. And renting hotels and new houses to film in and stuff. It really, really, really added up on Stab 7. So it really sucks. I think we probably spent close to $4,000 or $5,000 on a movie that we didn't finish, so that's really disappointing. But what is most disappointing, and I'm sure Rachel will say the same thing too, is that we didn't get to put out a finished product for our fans, and that's what we really wanted to do. Stab 7 is supposed to be a finale. That's why we added in all these big crazy things. That's why there's these mashups. That's why I'm an app. That's why Stephanie made a comeback. That's why you get to see all these characters and live and breathe through new characters and die through them too, because it's the fucking finale. I wanted fireworks. And sadly, we still haven't given it to you. So someday we really do hope to finish the Stab 7. And we just don't know if that's possible. We don't know if we can ever actually complete the storyline of what we started with what we have. So read the script so you can know how we wanted the series to end. Because we didn't want it to end with an unfinished movie. So that's the great debate right now. Do we make Stab 7 again, or do we reboot Stab and start all over so that we can start again with actors who are more committed and who have been through less trauma, so are maybe more willing to show up?